Okay, we're good to go.
Okay, let's go ahead and call this meeting to order. It'll be a regular meeting, February 11th, 2021. We have everybody present. We have a quorum. We can conduct business. So let's get to it. We don't have anybody, any member comments, I don't believe today. Mark, do we?
We do not, but I will let the board know that we have received a verbal request, and I'm waiting for the written request from Dan Lubar, Slopeside Internet, to do a presentation to the board next month. And he's going to bring some other folks with him. And we had a conversation, a couple conversations, and he was going down one road, but I think he's taken a different exit, and now he's going to present something different. So as soon as I find something out, we will put that on the agenda for next week.
Okay, perfect. Minutes of pre-meeting, so they get a chance to look at the minutes. Any changes, any corrections? If not, can we get a motion to accept the minutes?
So moved.
A motion by Sid and a second by Dick. Any further discussion on the minutes? All those in favor? Like the motion carries. Okay, attorney's report. Bryson, you got anything for us?
Nothing in addition to what Levi already sent you.
Okay, perfect. Manager's report. Mark, you're up.
Okay, we want to start with the introduction of Don Finn, our new operations manager. Wave, Don. And then Brian Lee, our safety coordinator. Both of the guys have hit the ground running. They started on Monday. They've been in a number of meetings with employees, getting to know some of the employees, attended their first safety meeting, and also made their first visit to Walden and Kremling. So we expect great things out of them, and I'm going to give them each a minute to do their elevator introduction to you. So Don, we'll start with you.
Gotta unmute, sir.
Hey, good morning, everybody. My name is Don Finn. I hail from Cedar Rapids, Iowa. It's over in eastern Iowa, and I'm very grateful for this opportunity. Everybody at Mountain Parks has been very gracious and with their time and giving me a lot of opportunity to ask questions, and I'll continue to do that for a long time. I have a lot of years of utility experience. I was regional director at an IOU in Iowa. I actually had generation at that time too. So I had 2 coal-fired power plants, and then probably about 300 employees. I love the operations world. That might sound kind of sick to some people, but I love the opportunity to be able to troubleshoot, to be able to work with employees and come up with solutions, and just to see people be creative and innovative. And I can see this bunch is creative and innovative, and I'm excited about that and what the future has to bring. So I currently live right in Granby, and my wife will be moving out after the school year's over. This summer, we'll be continuing to look for housing, and we're both excited about this opportunity. So thank you.
Welcome.
Yeah, welcome. Welcome aboard. We look forward to meeting him someday.
Yes.
And then we have Brian Lee, our new safety coordinator, and he comes to us with many years of experience. So Brian, your 1-minute elevator introduction.
I don't think I'll even need that. But yeah, I'm Brian. I'm originally from Ohio. I moved to Texas in 2011, and then now I'm living in Kremling at the moment. Yeah, my background is in electrical for 27 plus years, over 15 years of it in the safety realm of it. I hold a CESCP, which is a certified electrical safety compliance professional. I hold multiple licenses in different states, Texas, Ohio at the moment, some other states, but I've let those go because there's no need for them now. My background is, I've worked in other industries as well. machinist for 10 years plus. But I'm looking forward to, everybody's been very nice to me that I've met here. It's making my job much easier. So I'm looking forward to everything that I can do to help. There's some areas that, I've already noticed that we can improve on, but I've walked into a lot worse. So I'm looking forward to working with each and every one of you, and hopefully get to meet you in person as soon as possible.
Likewise, and welcome aboard.
Welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think that we were very fortunate in our searches for both to find Brian. It took us a lot longer than we anticipated, but we went through a number of really qualified candidates, but for one reason or another, they didn't work out. When we ended up with Brian, we had two candidates that were very qualified, and after going through the process, staff, pretty much everybody agreed he was the best candidate for us. And so looking forward to what he could do to help improve our safety program. And same thing with Don. I really felt that filling the ops manager position was going to be extremely difficult. We got a number of really great resumes. We narrowed it down to three highly qualified candidates. Don was the shining star amongst the three. So we took a shot and to see if we could bring him into the fold, and he accepted. So we're very excited about the opportunity to get everybody working and moving us forward as an organization. So with that, I'll make one note to start with is you will notice in the board report or in the board packet that staff reports have changed based on some board member comments about a greater focus on the strategic plan. We changed the design and template of the staff reports so that the first part that you see in the staff report is strategic plan, and you will see the goal or objective and then what we are doing to achieve that. Now, each month you're not going to necessarily see each item in there, only the ones that we are doing that we have done something during the month to move that progress forward. The second section is related to other activities, because obviously we continue to do other things that don't specifically relate to the strategic plan. And then lastly, if the department has stats that they want to share with the board, those are included there. At the end, I think that the reports are cleaner. It makes it easier to focus on some of the things that we're doing related to achieving the strategic goals and objectives. So with that, I will move in to my report, and I'm going to start with the strategic plan. One of our goals is to explore new business opportunities. We are looking at that related to the fiber backbone project. We've been working obviously for quite some time with a possible partner. It appears based on the update that I've gotten from them within the last couple of days and before that, they're struggling to find the financing necessary to partner with us. They continue to be extremely optimistic that they will find it, but that has been the case for the last couple of months, and nothing has shaken out at this point. They continue to do the work, but Joe and I have started to discuss other opportunities of how we might monetize the backbone if the partner drops out. We believe that there are opportunities because we're going to build it either way, and there are opportunities for us to potentially monetize it in a slightly different way than leasing a portion of the line to somebody else and then allowing them to monetize it. And I think that's part of what Dan will discuss next month when he does his presentation, because I think he has a number of ideas. So we will move forward on that. Joe, his report provides information about the RDOF auction, the auction that the FCC did, as well as Connexon. which was the large group that brings together co-ops and others. And they were successful on winning several portions, including parts of our service territory. Joe and I have a meeting scheduled to speak with their management on Tuesday to get more information. There was a quiet period where they could not say anything while the FCC reviewed all of the bids, made sure that they were solid. There has been some efforts on the part of Nr Eca and some lawmakers to ask the FCC to go back and look to make sure that those that bid can actually do what they said that they could do in their bid before finalizing the approval of the winner. So we'll hopefully get a little bit more information from Connection on Tuesday about who they are, what the opportunities are for us to potentially participate with them as we move forward. The next goal, it was proactively provide products and services to meet member needs. Levi and I have been trying to finalize the consumer solar or community solar lease. We have sent back and forth several drafts, and no offense to Bryson, but attorneys sometimes make it difficult, and their attorney has made it difficult because after we had sent 5 drafts back and forth, it appeared that he read the document for the first time, and then he had a bunch of changes that he wanted to make. Levi spent time with him on the phone. I think that we are to a final draft. There is one outstanding item, and don't laugh, but they're concerned about noise generated by the solar project. And so what I have done is reached out to them and I said, you know, we'd be happy to let you tour our solar projects. And I said, what you hear, assuming that the wind is not blowing and making too much noise, is maybe a little bit of clicking as the panels move, and then a slight hum that you would have from any transformer. And so I said, if you're more than about 25 feet away from the project, you don't hear anything. But that is one of the issues that they have raised, is noise nuisance. And so we'll hopefully address that and be able to move forward. They did actually change sites on us, because we had a site that we had agreed to. They are building a building, and so they moved the building, which then they didn't want to have to look directly at the solar project. So they provided us with 2 additional sites. ISI, our contractor, went out there, looked at both sites, believes that both will work. They're in the process of having their engineering and construction people look at which one is best for us. And they actually think that because of the design or the way the site is, and it has a little bit of a slope to it, it may actually improve production of the solar field. So I will stop there for a moment to see if there are any questions on either of those topics.
I think Liz got a question.
Connection's the one that we, yeah, okay. Yeah, thank you. I'm sure you filled Mark in.
Yes, Jonathan Chambers, Randy Clint gave us a presentation 4-ish years ago or so.
Right, okay, yeah.
Okay, moving on to the next item, which is update our wildfire plan. Attached to my report are the community wildfire protection plan and our vegetation management plan. MPE actually worked with the community work group, and it's county, fire, and others to develop that work plan. It's from 2015. They understand, I've talked to them, to the work group about it, that it needs to be updated. And so that will be a process that we will be going through. Don will be our representative to the group to make sure that that things that are put in there work for mountain parks as well. But in addition to that, Don's goal, one of his goals for 2021, is to develop a wildfire plan specifically for mountain parks. Mountain parks, I think, has somewhat leaned on in the past this community wildfire protection plan. And while I think it has a lot of great information in it, I don't think it's specific enough to a co-op and specifically us. So we will take the best parts of it, the vegetation management plan, and best practices from some of the other co-ops, and put together a wildfire plan that's specific to mountain parks. Dick did send me a text, I believe it was yesterday, regarding a wildfire listening session on February the 18th at noon. The governor, some of our congressional representatives and senators are scheduled to participate. Now, I don't know if that means that Bennett or somebody else is actually going to be on it, or it's going to be a member of their staff. I would assume that in many cases it will be a member of their staff. But that is scheduled for the 18th. We will get more details and send those out to the board. So if the board wants to participate in that listening session, that they can. It is on the same day that we're going to do another event, but I don't believe that the times will conflict. So I think we should be fine. The last thing on the wildfire plan is that I provided, and it's an attachment to my report. It says troublesome fire, a spreadsheet that shows the FEMA original estimate that we provided to them, and we've broken it down by labor, materials, overheads, and contractors. And then below that, we have the cost that we have spent to date in each of those categories, and then the remaining cost that's there. We continue to refine the plan so that $7 million well, it's actually about 6.8. We expect that it's actually going to go down and not necessarily up, but we'll provide that report to the board every month so that you can see as we spend money, where the money is going and how much we're spending. So I will stop on that one because that one's kind of a big one, and see if there are any questions related to the wildfire plan. Kristen.
I noticed that there was no estimate for contractor related expenses and that overhead was pretty high. Could you explain the two of those?
I can. I believe that, and let me look at the little spreadsheet here. There isn't anything under contractor because initially we were looking at, we had to provide them with an estimate. And so we did that estimate based on us doing all the work. Obviously, we don't have the resources to do all the work. So what you see is that under contractors, we have about $300,000 that we've spent. That was mostly related to Highway 125. Scott and I have been talking. He has created an estimate to do the additional work on 125, and that will most likely be done with contractors. So when FEMA asks you for the estimate, they say, oh, and by the way, can you provide it to us in 2 days? So we put together an estimate based on what we have. And then as we do other things, we can refine the estimate and provide it to them. We did actually set up the portal finally for FEMA. And that was because they kept telling us, they sent us the information and we weren't receiving it. But we set it up on Monday and we've been uploading documents to FEMA since Monday related to it. As to the overheads, they are a large portion of the cost. And I have had some conversations with Scott and Stacy about that. What I did on the bottom is show you what the overheads are and what percentage that they are, and then included a little bit of what we put into the overhead. I think that one of the reasons why our overheads are high as a percentage of the actual cost of doing a project is that we are a smaller utility. We have smaller projects, but the costs don't necessarily change. So for instance, when I was in Anchorage, our overheads were significantly lower than that, but we had a $45 million capital budget every year. And so there were many more dollars to spread those overheads over. We are going to undertake a investigation is into all of these overheads and see if there's a way for us to potentially reduce the overheads. But the bottom line is that these are costs that we are currently incurring for either employees or vehicles, that type of thing, gas depreciation on things. And if we don't put them in as an overhead to the projects that we build, then they fall directly to the bottom line. And it is, I believe, more prudent to do it as part of a project that it gets spread over 30 years than to dump it all into a single year, because then what you're going to have is kind of a sawtooth. In years where you have more projects, you would put it through the project. In years that you have less project, it would all drop to the bottom line. And when I put this together, I will tell you that I made the calls and we talked to Stacy and Scott and I, because I said, this can't be right. The number for overheads is more than the number for labor and materials. Now, as we go through this, what you see is that currently in the projects that we've done, we have more in labor and materials than in overheads. So there is a possibility that we won't charge that amount to overheads on this project, but our overheads are high and we have to figure out a way to address that.
Yeah, I do also have a question that under the overheads breakdown, there's like a category 1, 2, 3, 4. Some of those categories also include labor, and then the percentages 59, 44, 56, 45% add up to roughly 200%. Could you explain what's going on there?
Those are, I mean, basically those are the percentages that you come up with when you look at the cost to go into those particular overheads, and then dividing them over the projects that we have, either customer projects or MPE projects. The labor is related to indirect. Typically, you're going to have people, and I'll use myself as an example, that provide some time to the construction project. Now, I believe mine's about 10% of my time that I deal with construction related things. So 10% of my expense goes to that as an indirect labor. And you'll have other people that may have similar things, and the percentages will vary. In Anchorage, we had, I believe, 15 to 20 people that had a percentage of their salary that went into the indirect, and it's because they weren't necessarily working directly with the projects, but they had a piece of making sure that the project were reviewed and happened like they were supposed to.
Okay, so like when it says transportation 59%, that's 59% of what?
It's 59% of whatever dollar that you spend, and whether that's a direct labor dollar. Some of them are on labor, and some of them are on the materials, and that basically is the cost of primarily our fleet, and the trucks that are used for the guys to go out and do the work, maintaining the trucks. And fuel, we spend about $700,000 a year in fuel. And so those are the costs related to, I mean, we call it transportation, and normally people would think of that in terms of, okay, that is something to move things. No, that's actually for our fleet of whether it be vehicles or the derrick diggers or the backhoes and that type of thing. Those costs are what we pay to maintain that fleet.
Mark, I had two questions. One along the lines of what Kristen was saying. I'm a little confused, and I think before we get into it, I'd like to maybe sit down with you or whoever's working the numbers, Stacy, and go over some of it. The other question is, we're looking at $7 million. Knowing how fast FEMA pays you, and knowing that you can't borrow from RUS until your projects are basically done, do we have the cash flow over the next year or so to cover this? In line with some of the other scenarios from the financial report? You know,
Yes, with RUS, you know, as we complete projects, we do forms. One of them is 219. It says, you know, we've completed the project. We send it to them, and then that provides us with the ability to borrow against the approved loan that we have, and we did that. We did about $10.8 million in capacity, and we borrowed against the approved loan, and we did it at a 10-year loan at less than 1%.
right, but is that going to cover this? That's my question.
It covers the amounts that we need it to cover for this, as well as part of the fiber and the community solar.
Okay, thank you.
Do other board members understand this?
Go ahead, Justin.
I mean, back to what Kristen was saying, it seems like the percentages are 200% there still. So I'm not following. If 59% is in transportation, 44% in indirect labor, where's the other additional 100%? Or what are, yeah, I still go back to Kristen's original question of how we're getting 200% of one item.
Yeah, I have the same sort of question, like if you could just give an example of, okay, we have this small sectional line.
It's $10,000.
Yeah, $10,000. The materials of it are $2,000. The labor's $3,000. The what, you know, whatever. How do you figure the overhead on that? Because the 5944, that's confusing to me.
Okay, so you said materials are $200,000 or $2,000.
Yeah.
Then you would take the store's percentage of 45%, and you would charge 45% for every dollar. So basically $900 to the stores. So the stores would end up being materials would end up being $2,900 for the project. For the labor, you know, depending on, and realistically, I don't think you're ever going to have a project where you don't have some vehicles involved in it. But, you know, if you didn't, you would have no transportation, but in most cases you are. So what you're going to do is for the direct labor, the dollars, and I don't remember what number you said, but let's just say $4,000. You're going to take the $4,000 and you're going to multiply the approximately 150%. And so if your direct labor is $4,000, you're going to have an additional $6,000 potentially there. Now, as you can see from what we have spent thus far, it doesn't always work that way because, you know, some of the overheads don't end up being charged for one reason or another, that you're doing something different with that particular project. So, but in the event that you had a project that had all of the things that are displayed here, then you would add about 150% to the direct labor for that project.
And that 150%, you're basically taking the labor and you're adding the overheads of transportation, indirect labor, and benefits.
Right. So, for instance, if you have $4,000 of direct labor, it adds about $6,000 of overheads.
Okay, and then the stores are charged on materials. And if we were to use contractors rather than our own labor, what sort of overhead would be charged on the contractors?
We don't charge overhead, and Stacy can correct me on this if I'm wrong. We don't charge our overheads onto contractors unless we're providing the materials, because they will provide us with a bill, and it's generally a time and materials bill. And they say, I will do this project for $10,000. And so we don't charge the overheads on those projects.
But we would have some indirect labor involved in those projects, I would guess. I mean, you guys have to to interact with the contractors and make sure the job's going the way it's supposed to and all of that. So do we have a different rate for that? I mean,
No,
we have-
the indirect would be, yeah, the indirect would be the same, but Stacy, do we charge indirect on the contractors, indirect labor on the contractors?
I don't do the estimating side of it, but the charges in NISC are not set up to charge indirect labor costs on contractors. That I defer to Scott to see if on a subcontractor unit price, if we have any type of indirect in there, but no.
Scott, can you address whether or not we're charging the indirect labor on the contractors? And you're muted, so if you're Scott, you need to unmute yourself.
Okay, what was that?
If we have a contract, are we charging our indirect overhead on the contract that's being done by a contractor?
No, we don't charge overheads on the contractors.
Okay. That's something that obviously we can look at, and we will look at as we go through this to see if there's a way to spread these overheads over a larger number of projects, which would then lower the overhead rate.
Mark, I trust your numbers are right, but I've just got to point out that we charge labor 4 separate times. We have a category for labor, and then under the overheads, transportation includes labor, indirect labor is labor, and then stores includes labor. Can't we just break that out into labor instead of lumping it all in overhead?
Well, and the labor that we charge as for, I mean, yes, you could, but the labor that we charge on the project is for the guys that are actually working the project. So the linemen, the stakers, that type of thing. The labor related to the transportation is the people that maintain the vehicles. And so that ends up not being something that you could direct charge to. I mean, you could direct charge to a project, but it would be, I would say, incredibly difficult, because you'd have to figure out if, when they went out to work, was there something specific that they had to do to the vehicle? The labor related to the warehouse and the stores is the labor to to run the warehouse. And so you're right, we're charging labor 3 times, but it's 3 different pieces of labor. Or 4, sorry.
And basically what we're doing is we're estimating a job on the number of units of labor to build it, stake it, whatever. And then we have us, based on those number of units, we come up with a cost, and we add little smaller units of all the overhead labor to that. And we try to spread out those costs basically over the annual cost for those things over the total number of units that we build over the year.
Yes.
Or proportionate to it.
Mark, basically what we're doing is we're reallocating our actual expenses to capital.
Right.
Is basically what's happening. We're taking a portion of everything involved in a project and taking it from your operating statement and capitalizing it. And these are the portions of each of the areas that get added. So whereas every time you do a project like these, you're going to be adding a multiplier to cover these different categories of overhead is basically what's happening. And you're pulling it out of your bottom line and you're making it an asset. Is that
right?
correct?
It becomes a part of the asset, which is then amortized or depreciated over 25 or 30 years. And so you recoup those costs through depreciation and amortization over time, rather than having the expense go directly to the bottom line, which it would if it was an operating expense.
Thank you.
Last question. Is this the same methodology we use when charging members?
Yes, and what you will see, and we've had a couple of members that we've talked to about this, And they obviously, like for stores, believe that it's high, and we've been able to, adjust for some things, because typically what we were doing was we would charge the overhead percentage on all stores, some of which never came into the warehouse. They were delivered directly to the site. And so, we never touched them other than to order them. We never touched them or handled them. And so for those, we have worked with those contractors and adjusted the overheads to exclude those items. It's a manual process that now we're trying to do it automated to be able to exclude items that we don't actually handle, because the store's overhead should be for things that we are touching, we're putting on the shelves, we're checking in, checking out, and charging. So that's why in some cases, and in some cases it can be a significant amount of money, because for one project, the concrete vaults were $40,000 or $50,000, and so if you add another 45% on there, that's a good chunk of money. And so with those, we were able to actually go back and make the adjustments on them.
If we have new construction line extension stuff that contractors are building versus our guys, then the price is significantly different for that line extension, I'm thinking.
Well, the contractors do the same thing. They add their overheads when they bill us.
But I would agree that it is potentially a lower cost to have a contractor do something than for us to do it internally. But keep in mind that if, let's just say that we had contractors do 50% of our work, these costs are still there. So
right.
They all go to the bottom line because we're still paying these people. Now, over time, we look at staffing to determine whether or not it's appropriate, or whether we can move people to other areas and utilize their resources to do something different. And that's part of the ongoing process for us, is making sure that staffing is appropriate.
Well, it gets to that tension about how much flows to the bottom line and how much is capitalized, and how that might affect our competitiveness versus contractors. I think that it probably, if all of our getting capitalized, or almost all our overhead is getting capitalized.
It's not.
No. Okay.
So
but
if I could do one point of clarification, I don't want to drag the discussion out and I don't want to confuse anything, but the transportation, the indirect labor, and the benefit percentages follow labor for a small percentage. For our linemen, for our stakers, those percentages go with their labor. So if their labor hour, so take 1 hour, gets charged to a work order, all those percentages follow it. If that 1 hour gets charged to overhead, an expense account, all those percentages follow that expense. So we are expensing some of this overhead with labor, and then we are capitalizing some of it. So we're not pushing all of this overhead into the work orders. But I do look at maintaining a balance of, how much is getting capitalized versus how much is getting expensed. And I work with, it'll be Dawn now and Scott to look at where what are we using our money for each year to employ our linemen, and where's the money going to for subcontractors? And if we have more subcontractors than our internal employees, how does that look for this capitalizing versus expensing? Just wanted to add that.
Thank you.
Okay, if there are no more questions, and I expect, Justin, did you have one?
Just a brief comment. I mean, hopefully we are sensitive to, Grand Park and Rome and some of their things that they've brought up in how expensive Mountain Parks Electric is to doing some of these projects where they could probably bring in a contractor to do it cheaper. So, I mean, I'd like us all to continue to think about that.
And we have had conversations with at least two of the three, and probably all three. But I've been involved in conversations with two of the three, and we have talked through some of these things. And at this point, they are satisfied. They may not be happy, but they're satisfied with the way that we are doing things and the way that we are working with them to try and change some of the ways that we have done stuff in the past. So we will continue to do that. And as I said, this is going to be a process that we're going to look at, because when I started putting these things together and looking at work orders and stuff and saw the numbers, I really thought that maybe we had made a mistake. It is not, but I think that there are ways that we can work to lower the overhead rates that we have.
Mark, this is Carl. Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Going back to your community wildfire plan, and you said you're going to update it to mountain parks, I assume, and this is an assumption on my part, that you're going to include the whole of mountain parks territory, which includes Jackson County and the Laramie River and all of that into this.
Yes, the wildfire plan that's specific to us that we will develop this year with Don's help will actually cover all of our service territory, regardless of where that service territory is.
Good. One question about the Laramie River, since the power is supplied by carbon power, how is that coordinated with line clearing and all that kind of stuff with them, since it's not our line?
And Scott is, oh, there's Scott. Scott, do you want to address how we do the clearing in Laramie River? And unmute yourself.
We clear the trees around our lines. Carbon is responsible for clearing trees on their lines.
Because I think a clarification, Carl, is that we do own those lines. They provide the power at a connection point, but we do own those lines.
Okay, that wasn't my assumption, but thanks for clearing that up.
Well, and that's part of what we discussed with the board last year, is making a proposal to Carbon to see if they wanted to take over that, because frankly, it's really closer to being part of their system than ours because of its remoteness. And because of the some of the issues ongoing at Tri-State, they looked at it, they were interested, but they weren't willing to move forward until some of the Tri-State issues are resolved.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on. The next goal was establish two-way communication with members, and then actually a second goal, use technology to address reliability and load control. Our outage management system went live on Wednesday. We are working to add to our an outage map to our website, and then as well establish member notifications through Smart Hub. Now, the members will need to sign up for the notifications from Smart Hub, and I know you may look at that and say, well, why don't we just send them to everybody? We can't, because if we send, and this was something that we ran into with some other issues related to notification of members. If we send text and they are unwanted text or even phone calls, emails, we potentially become subject to liability, which depending on how many we've sent, they can file suit against us and recover money because they didn't ask for the communication, but we sent it anyway. So that's why we are going through the process of having members that have Smart Hub sign up. We also believe that it will increase our Smart Hub utilization, and virtually all of our members that use Smart Hub love Smart Hub. And so it provides the information to the member when they need it. And the notifications of an outage would not go out to all members on SmartHub. They would be sent to just the members that were affected by the outage. So there will also be additional phases of implementation related to this, where we will put in additional features for the outage management system that help us to better manage our system. You can get information about, whether things are overloaded, underloaded. You can look at where your outages are, and then hopefully address those issues before they become larger issues that result in outages. The last thing related to that is, and I haven't talked with Rob about this, so he's going to be really happy. We're going to develop a marketing plan to make sure that members know that, one, they can sign up, two, that they can get it through SmartHub, to try and get as many members as possible. And when we talk to members, whether it's a message on our website, through social media or other things, we're going to try and drive as many members as possible to SmartHub, so that they can get the information directly from SmartHub and not necessarily need to call us and tell us that there's an outage.
Mark,
Liz?
yeah, so people won't necessarily need to sign up through SmartHub to get the notification. I mean, if we have someone has trouble with computers and isn't on SmartHub, if they want to get outage notifications, can they call the office and say, hey, I want to get outage notifications, and go through the process that way? Or are they going to have to go through SmartHub?
They need to go through SmartHub, because it will be an automated system that will send out the updates. So it will tell, the way we are looking to set it up is, it will tell them that there's an outage, the number of people that we think that it is affecting. Our people are on site working on it, and give potentially, if we know, some estimate of how long it will take to fix. We can then send out updates as we continue to work on it to them, to say that, we have restored power to 50% of the people, and then when we're done, or we think we're done, we can send out an email that says, all power should be restored. If you continue to have issues, please contact us. Because it's possible that we think that everything was fixed, but there was a one-off that for whatever reason didn't get fixed. But it is an automated process that we will set up within the outage management system, which ties into SmartHub, and we'll send out those notifications.
Will there still be a phone number that people can call and hear a recording? We are currently experiencing an outage and blah, blah, blah. We expect power to be restored by X. Or will it all be email and website?
We have not talked about having a phone call or a phone number. I mean, obviously they can call our office, and that was one of the challenges that we had with New Year's Day, and talk with our member service. We're working on the ability to take those notifications and put them into social media, so that on Facebook, the same notification that would come through SmartHub would be on social media. Facebook, Twitter, I don't know if we do Instagram, so I guess partially in answer to your question, Liz, they don't necessarily have to. They could follow us on Facebook or Instagram and get the same information. But I think it's much easier, and it's more direct to the member and more personal for them if they do it through SmartHub.
Yeah, I'm just trying to make sure we don't leave people behind that don't have the time or don't have the technical skills to access the SmartHub. I would love it if all our members were on SmartHub, but I recognize that's probably not possible. And so I just want to make sure that the folks who aren't on SmartHub and don't necessarily have those capabilities still have the capability of talking to someone or getting the information some other way. But that's for you guys to figure it out, how they do that.
Yeah. One of the things that I will say is Stacy and the staff that are in the member service area do a really great job when they talk to members and they talk to them about Smart Hub. They will actually walk them through setting it up. And as a result, we've had a number of people that have signed up, because they called us and, had an issue. They wanted to know about their usage or something else like that. There's a lot of really great information on Smart Hub. And, you don't necessarily have to do it on your smartphone. You can do it on a computer, but it's just, a lot of really good information specific to the member. And so what it does is it allows them to get that information as opposed to having calls, which drive, additional work for our staff. And that's part of what we would do is over time, if we look at this and we say, okay, we have 70% adoption of Smart Hub, and we have, staff that we can use in a different way, then we would do that as opposed to maybe hiring somebody new. Or if somebody retired or left the organization, we would look at whether or not we needed to replace them because we have, diminished the number of incoming calls to Mountain Parks.
Just
Kristen.
throwing this out there as an idea. First, I love that you're going to have an outage map on the website. That's fabulous. Thank you for doing this work. Secondly, I would invite you to consider, so right now there is a number that you can call the Mountain Parks General Line. There's like an option that you select to report an outage. People will still be calling into that number. I don't know about you guys, but when my internet or when my power goes out, my internet router also goes out. So I have to rely on LTE service. And a lot of people in our service territory don't have that. So I just invite you to consider a pre-recorded message, if you can, that says we're aware of an outage and working to restore. And I see Joe's putting his finger up. So
I can speak a little more to that. So we have, when the last T's are crossed and I's are dotted, the system will recognize you. If the phone number you're calling from is the phone number on an account, and you are in outage, it will grab your call and play the outage for you and play any updates that the system knows about. So if there's crews en route, if there's crews on site, what the status updates are along the way, those will be automatically directed to you. If you are calling in to report an outage from a number that is not recognized or not attached to the account, there is going to be a message that will say there's experiencing an outage in certain areas. If you are affected by an outage, you can further report an outage, or know that we are working on various outages in various locations. It's, again, non-specific data, but it does play that.
that's great. Liz, do you think that addresses some of your concerns?
Yeah, I think so. And I just wanted to say to the staff that I read that the IREA CEO is retiring. And they said he'd been there for 10 years and they listed his accomplishments. And he was very proud in that 10 years to get the AMI and the outage management system up and running. I've only been on this board for 5 years. So I think we're going to beat IREA and getting our AMI system and outage management system up and running. So thanks, you guys.
Okay, if there aren't any other questions, Stacy.
So just to let the board know, I just looked at Mosaic, which is just a graphical representation of our members at times, and 43% of our members are on Smart Hub right now. So I think it showed like 7,800, just under 7,800 members.
But we want to see that number above 50%. So we'll keep working. And enhancing the features on Smart Hub to where that people just won't be able to live without Smart Hub. So we'll continue to do that. Moving on, provide a safe work environment. Obviously, that's part of why we hired Brian with his background and his focus. And part of one of his goals for the year will be to review our safety program and make recommendations to change it or improve it. He mentioned in his 1-minute elevator speech that, you know, he has already identified some things that he thinks that we can do better. And I think that that's one of the good things about bringing in somebody from outside, is they will take a different critical look at either the system or the program, and provide us with some input on things that we didn't necessarily have. One of Brian's skills, which he didn't, he was too modest to talk about, is he has done a lot of training for staff. And I think that we'll be able to utilize him to do some of the training that we couldn't get, or we had to do over the internet or webinars, because he has the ability and the skill set to be able to actually do training of staff, whether it's in small groups or as a larger thing at one of our all-employee breakfasts. So that will hopefully increase the safety awareness at the organization. I mean, I think we do a pretty good job. As I told him when we hired him, I think we can always do better. And so we'll continue to work on that. The last one, under cost cutting, effective generation resources, including renewable energy and storage, we have received the draft PPA, power purchase agreement, and proposed press release from the alternative power supplier. Levi and I have begun the review of the PPA and expect that we will send back a draft version to them within the next 30 to 45 days. We have plenty of time at this point to be able to go back and forth. Rob and I have exchanged a number of drafts of the press release with them. And we're waiting for a final draft that we can share with the board before it actually goes live. I think Justin, a few months back, had asked if you guys could see it before we send it out. And we are working on that. And it's a little bit of a challenge, but because they have a whole big public relations department, compliance department, legal department, and all of them seem to want to change things. And so you change a word, and then the next department changes it to something else, and the next one changes it to something else. And then by the time it comes back around, it's the same word that you put in to start with, but it takes 2 weeks to get that done. So I will stop there to see if anybody has any issue on the last couple that we talked about. And doesn't appear so. So I will move on to other. The first item is that Kristen had asked for a breakdown of large power members in the packet, and it is after the solar press release. There's a sheet that breaks down the large power into our members in rates 7 and 8. It takes that and breaks them down by the number of meters that are in there and the number of members, because some of the members have multiple meters. It also provides an example of how the rate is designed. It shows the pieces that go into the rate, and then there's an example, and those examples are actual member bills from that particular group for a period of, basically for a single month. And so I don't know if that fully answers the questions that you had. And Kristen, if you want, we can talk offline and see if there's additional information that you would like to see.
Well, the only question I have is, where can I find this in the iPad? Because mine on the manager's report. And vegetation management.
If you, under the manager's report, you go down the first, I think it's 71 pages, which is the community wildlife, and you should come across at that point the press release.
Okay, I see it.
After the press release, yeah, well, because the iPad, at least from what I'm seeing, it doesn't tell you, the old thing, it would tell you what page you were on, and it doesn't tell you what page it is, and it's my fault, because Michelle asked me, how do you want to put this on there? And I said, well, just put them on. I'll just talk about them in the order that they are, not realizing that the one document's 71 pages, and that one ended up the one that went first. So in the future, what we will do is, much like we did with the troublesome fire, they will be separate sections, so it makes it easier to find those particular items.
Much obliged. I see it now. Thank you very much.
And Kristen, I can change that after the board meeting too, so that if you need to go back into them, they're separate.
Okay, Carl had talked or asked about a press release related to the projected savings of the two current projects that we have. Rob and I have developed a press release, which is in there right in front of the large power. And the press release shows that we have savings. They're small comparatively for the first year, but what it also tries to explain is that in the early years, we expected that the savings would be smaller because we're recouping the projected construction cost of those projects in years 1 through 9. Once you get to year 10 through 25, we expect that the savings will be larger, and so it takes and part of this has to do with the loan, well, the lease that we have with CoBank and the way that we have to pay that back. And so this project costs are front loaded. And then once you get beyond year 10, you basically have maintenance costs as your only cost. And so your savings are higher as a result of that. So if the board wants to take a look at that and let us know if you have any questions or comments, you can just email me. And then if not, then we will send that out to the local media outlets to see if we can get them to print that. Okay, moving on. The CREA grant presentation, basically told you last month that we had in December applied for part of the grant for wildfire assistance that CREA had set up. They looked at our request and actually gave us the largest percentage of the money from that fund. There were 3 co-ops that got money, Poudre Valley and Holy Cross. Neither of those had any employees that lost their homes or had their homes damaged. And so as a result, we got the largest percentage of the money. They are going to be in the office. Well, basically they're going to be in the garage because we're doing it in the fleet garage so that we can have a significant social distancing. We will, it is February 18th. It starts at 10 a.m. and we will do pictures of 3 groups. And we have scheduled it to 11:30. I don't think it's going to go that long because I figure the pictures probably are going to take about 15 minutes or less per group. The first group will be photos of our employees that received assistance, and there were 5 of those. The 2 that lost their homes received significantly more than the ones who were displaced, but they still, CREA was extremely generous with the employees. The second group is Mountain Family Center and Grand Foundation. They made donations to both of their wildfire assistance programs in the amount of $4,200 for each. And then we had included 8 first responders from Grand Lake. There was one, I think, in Granby and one in Parshall that had lost their homes. And as a result of that, CREA gave to each of the first responders $2,250. And so we will have some of them there to take pictures as well. And then the last entity that received money is they looked at it and there was $662 left over. And so they decided to give it to the Grand Lake Fire District. But in the interim, they've continued to see monies come in. And so the number, I think, is currently up to $2,200 that they're going to give to them. In talking with the Grand Lake Fire District, they are very appreciative, but they believe that there are other fire districts that maybe need the money more than they do. Parshall is one that they referenced. And as a result, I think they may choose to give the money that they received to Parshall to assist them with some of the things that they had to deal with, because they're an all volunteer fire department, and they basically left their jobs for 2 days to fight the fire, and did not get paid from their regular job. And as a volunteer, they didn't get paid by the fire department. So the board, I think, received an invitation to that. I believe Carl at this point has responded that he's going to attend. Jeff will be there because he's the president of our board as well as the CREA board. We expect Kent Singer, the executive director for CREA, and Rod Martinez, who is the president of the CEEI board. And they're the actual group that analyzed all of the requests and made the decision of how to allocate the monies. And then the last item that I have is we got a call this week from a tri-state employee, and they had set up a GoFundMe page to help provide assistance to co-op employees that had their homes damaged or lost. And they raised $5,000 on their own. And this is not Tri-State giving this money. This is actual Tri-State employees that gave the money. And they want to donate it to our employees. And they had an idea of how they wanted to do it. I suggested that maybe might not be the best way, but obviously we'll take it however they want to give it to us. And we provided them with some additional information of how they might be able to do it and not have it be a tax consequence for the employee receiving the money. So we're working to finalize those details on the transfer, and then hopefully we'll get that taken care of relatively soon. Oh, and one last thing, which I didn't have in my report, but Justin and Mark had talked about the flood mitigation efforts that the groups are working on. We were contacted by somebody from Northern Colorado who is leading the group. And we have somebody that's going to participate in that group. And I believe that, I mean, we're starting to see stuff come back and forth, but I don't believe they've actually had their first meeting at this point. So, oh, and because Rob would probably kill me if I didn't mention this, or at least hurt me. The e-bus, school bus, it arrived in Denver. So the wheels on the bus do go round and round, and it arrived in Denver. They're putting on the aftermarket stuff that's needed, and the wrap that we designed with Tri-State's help. And so we will be planning a, I guess, introduction event for the new electric bus. And it's probably going to be sometime in March. So as we get closer and we get more information, we will send an invitation to the board and let everybody know when that is, so that if you want to come and see the bus or maybe even ride on the bus, you will be able to do that. And with that, that is the end of my report. So I take any other questions that anybody has.
Mark, this is Carl. A question for you.
Sure.
What is the status of the fund that Mountain Park set up for employees through the Mountain Family Center?
We provided $50,000. Others have given some money. To date, they have given out about $34,000. The majority of that has gone to our employees, 2 that lost their homes, and then 2 that their homes were damaged, and so they have been what I would call long-term displaced from their homes. They have not been able to move back into the homes for one reason or another, but they are now making the repairs necessary in order to do that. So there is still some money left in the fund, and we are continuing to get inquiries, and what we are doing is directing those companies that want to do something to put it into that fund.
Well, it's only for Mountain Park's employees, correct? I mean, I would assume that the employees would have applied by now for that money. If there's money left over, is it going to go to the membership, or is it going to sit there, or we're going to wait for more employees to apply, or how does that work?
Well, 3-part question there, Carl. So the first part is, it is not only for Mountain Park's employees, because we couldn't set it up that way and get the benefits that we needed out of it. However, we have not advertised it, and neither have they. So it's been primarily Mountain Park's employees that have benefited from it. Of the employees that we have, they have, you know, some of them know that they will have expenses, but they don't know what they will be, and they will incur those over the next year or so. So we expect that all of the money will be used by our employees, or the majority of it will be used by our employees over time. And for instance, we have one employee who had to have a structural analysis of his house. What they determined was that the fire had actually caused his roof to move. And so he has to replace the roof, and but he has some additional things he'll need to do in his house, and he might not know that for another 6 months. We have one of the employees that lost their home, that as they rebuild, they're finding, when we're working with their insurance company, that their expenses that they expected would be covered that are not covered. And so they have made a couple of requests to the fund that the fund has actually paid. And the way that it's designed, and this is to eliminate any potential tax liability for the employee, is that they make an application to Mountain Family Center. Mountain Family Center then pays the contractor directly. So the money never goes to the employee, and therefore there are no tax consequences for the employee. And there was a third part of your question, and I don't know that I answered it, but I cannot at this point remember what it was.
I think you did. I answered it, so thank you.
Any other questions? It related to anything that I talked about, because I know I covered quite a bit of ground. So seeing and hearing none, I will turn it back over to Jeff.
Okay, looks like we're at the discussion action items. Let's move into director policies. We've seen this one before, right? D3. We discussed this last month, is that correct?
It was originally, I think, presented to the board in December, and you discussed it last month, and it's back. I thought that, and Bryson, I don't know if you know, I thought that Levi had made some modifications based on board comments.
I'm not aware of what modifications, if any, he made, but I can confirm that very shortly here.
The only reason I ask is because there is no red in it. So normally he would do, you know, the track changes, and we would see if he, you know, any modifications that he made to it.
Yeah, let me reach out to him and see if he made any modifications. I should be able to get an answer within a couple minutes.
Okay, so Jeff, maybe we could move on to number D4.
Yeah, let's move to D4. So we've got some red line items in here, and Liz took the time and went through this, so I appreciate it, Liz. Is there any questions on what the changes are now? Any comments?
I hope this reflects what Carl, it reflects his concerns. I think it spells it out. So,
Carl, did you get a chance to read it?
I did, and I think it reflects what my intent was, so.
well, I'd move we approve it then. If it meets Carl.
Meet the Carl test. All right, we got a motion by Liz and a second by Dick. Any further discussion on E4? Okay, all those in favor? Looks like the motion carries. All right, we can move to D6.
Yeah, D6, 7, and 8. This is the first time that they have been presented. So what, I mean, obviously we can have discussion. The board can discuss the items, but if there are specific changes that that anybody wants to make, I think that it might be better to provide those changes. We can incorporate those and then bring them back for final action in March. But obviously, well, whatever the board wants to do related to these policies, because these are board policies.
96 has disappeared.
Yeah, mine too. I think something happened with the update.
It was there last
It
night.
was, yeah, it was there last night. It's gone now.
This morning. Huh.
So we don't have D6.
I'm updating it right now. Sorry. I don't know what happened to that. It was there.
I thought I was losing it too. I know I read that.
It was there, but it should be there again. And for D3, that is the one that you discussed in executive session. I know Kristen had some questions about it, and I think that his comment was there was something that had to change in the tariff if we changed anything in this one, if I remember right. So
I did discuss it with Levi. There aren't any changes on this one. On D3, his recollection was that it was discussed in executive session and the issues were addressed there so that there wasn't any change necessary. But if there is something necessary, then we'll have to do that.
I was surprised to see it back on the agenda this time.
Well, I think the only reason that it was, Kristen, is that we didn't actually vote on it. And
Yeah,
so that's why it came back.
We need to approve it or not.
So Jeff, if you want to go back, you could maybe look for a motion to approve that one.
Let's go back to D3. Is there a motion to approve?
I'd move to approve it, and like the last one, my intent is that it's a public facing policy.
Perfect. Thanks, Liz. Got a motion by Liz and a second by Mark. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Like the motion carries. Thank you. Okay.
Okay,
So it looks like
if you have refreshed your iPad, D6 has magically reappeared. And I believe that that the edits that are in here are ones that Liz suggested. I don't want to give you credit if that's not it, but I think that's what it was.
Yeah, I just suggested that rather than trying to, I just was like, we have the bylaws, they specify the standards. Let's just say, go to the bylaws rather than rehash this. Let's just make it easier. So that was my suggestion.
Anybody else have any questions, comments, concerns on that policy?
So I'd move to approve it.
Okay, thanks, Liz. We have a motion by Liz and a second by Dick. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Like the motion carries. Thank you. E7.
Doesn't appear that there are any edits to it.
Everybody get a chance to look at it? Does anybody have any comments? Justin?
I'll make a motion to approve it.
Thank you. We got a motion by Justin and a second by Mark Volt. Any further discussion on D7? All those in favor? Okay, looks like the motion carries. Moving on, D8, contested director elections.
I'd like to make a proposal that we ask Levi to review this, to add a section in anticipation of the potential of Crea getting approval for electronic balloting. One of the reasons being, I brought with me today an example. I don't know if you can see that date. It says January 30th, 2021. This is the Christmas card my best friend emailed to me or sent to me in mid-December. It's a 6-week delay. So if we do get a change in Colorado allowing for electronic voting, I think it'd be really nice if we could have our policies updated. I don't know if we're going to have time to incorporate that into this election or if we'll even have a contested director election. but it seems like we should be doing some work in advance to see how this policy could be modified to allow for that.
I'd agree with you, Kristen, but if we're going to see a change in that, it won't be until July with state law. So it won't affect this election, correct? Whatsoever.
It would still be nice to ask Levi to review it so we don't have to bring it back.
Yeah, I understand.
Yeah. There's one line that I did have a specific edit proposed, and that is under deadlines 1G. So for various reasons, we have a requirement that ballots be received 3 days before the election. I don't know the last time any of you were involved in a contested director election, but it was very confusing to a lot of the members in my district to try and understand, okay, we both have to have it postmarked 7 days before, and then it has to be received 3 days before. I would propose we just modify this to say that the voted ballots must be received 3 days before the election. It doesn't matter when it's postmarked, as long as it gets there 3 days before, they've got it. That's the deadline.
And the 3 days before is to give our folks enough time to.
Or the credentials committee enough time, because it's going to a third party now.
Well, and the new person, yeah. Yeah, it's gonna be tight.
I think we're going to have a lot of ballots that come in after the deadline. I mean, I would also propose, if the board were so willing, to consider an extension so that we'd allow ballots that were postmarked, before that 3 day to be counted. I don't know how y'all feel about that, but this is extraordinary. I've never seen post office delays like we're currently experiencing.
How would
you be able to do this? If you're having a meeting, how would you be able to handle this? I understand with the mail, I'm having the same problem. But if you have a meeting on a Saturday or Sunday and the ballots don't get in for 10 days.
The implication is you wouldn't know the results until after the annual meeting. It'd be.
Okay, I'm just saying, but the delay could be a week or two. We have to put a limit on how many days we wait. That would be my only concern. We'd have to put some limit on it. So.
And that would also be a reason to have, in addition, a postmark requirement if you're going to accept them after the fact, so that you know that they were voted before the annual meeting. And the one issue with accepting after the meeting is you do have your bylaws state that director elections will occur at the annual meeting. You are stretching that a little bit to accept ballots after that fact. I mean, it's not slam dunk impermissible, but that's what you run up against.
Well, and one thing I would say, I mean, I'm not opposed to having the ballots, especially since we have the issue with the post office right now, and we don't have electronic voting as an option, although people can drive, but we have a lot of second homeowners here who may not make it to Kremling, but want to have a say in what happens with their co-op, maybe. But I would at least suggest that we accept ballots up until the day of the election rather than cut it off 3 days in advance before the election. And I understand that we've tried to encourage people to send in their ballots early so that the night before the annual meeting, the credentials committee isn't overwhelmed. But I have to say, okay, where's that fine line between disenfranchising people and getting the work done so that we can announce who won at the annual meeting?
Right, and for mail-in ballots, one issue you have, if you do use an independent third-party counter to run your mail-in ballots, then they're going to go. The mail-in ballots will be received by them up to the day of the election. So there may be a timeline issue with them receiving ballots, mail-in ballots the day of the election.
Well, how about the day before? I mean, that would put it on a Friday. You'd collect everything that's arrived at your office by Friday. You've done the counting of things that have come before that, and then you include those ballots that come in Friday in the tally that you do on Saturday at our annual meeting. I like this as a suggestion.
The ballots will be addressed to Mountain Parks Electric, or they'll be addressed to the third party, and where?
They will be addressed to, I believe, Mountain Parks Electric, but at the address of the third party, which is Minnesota.
My take on this is we've spent a lot of time on this policy. I think it was last year, correct? And I'm not really in favor of tweaking it, at this point. I think it's good where it stands. I do like Kristen's idea to have Levi or Bryson look at it. Once we see that language, if we do in fact have language from the state that says what electronic voting will look like, but I'm not in favor of tweaking this policy.
Even the thing that says that the post office has to postmark. So here's, Jeff, here's the challenge. Let's say that our independent counter gets a ballot 4 days in advance. So they have that ballot.
Mm-hmm.
But that ballot was postmarked 6 days before. Do they throw out a ballot just because it didn't have a postmark 7 days before the annual meeting? That just seems ridiculous. As long as it gets there 3 days before.
Where is that? What line? Where are you talking about? Is that one?
Policy one deadline G.
Yeah, the first
One
page,
G.
Jeff.
Yeah. It's like a double requirement that the ballot, in order to be valid, both has to be postmarked a week before the election and received 3 days before the election.
What we might do with what's happening with the mail, I've seen in other situations, you just put a received by date, and it doesn't matter when it's mailed, doesn't matter how it's mailed, as long as whoever's counting them receives it by a certain date, it should be fine. And then it's up to the individual that mails it. If they want to mail it or drop it off, however they do it, that's their problem, and it takes that worry out of our hands. Just put a received by date, and I think that would alleviate any liability on our part.
And in campaigning, it's way easier to communicate that. You say the ballot has to be received by X date. And then just having this extra step of, and it has to be postmarked by this date. And a voter doesn't have any control over when the post office decides to mark it. It's, yeah.
So, Bryson, let me ask you a question. Could the board approve this policy as is and then have a resolution to waive 1G for this election for any contested seats?
Yes.
Because that may be a way to have it work for both. So we don't change it based on what Jeff wants, but we also address the concerns that Kristen and others are raising about giving people the opportunity to, get their ballots in. And so you could potentially waive the postmark and the 3-day requirement and then have them, as of Friday, the day before, because we are going to have voting at the annual meeting site. And so there will be people that will vote there. And the third party is going to come there and they will count those ballots and then add those to any tally that they have prior to that.
I think it leaves it a little vague if we were to do that. I think if I were a voter, I wouldn't know. I would think I had to, I don't know what I would have to do to vote. I don't know if my ballot would be counted or not. If we were to waive 1G, then are we telling our members we're waiving 1G, or are we we're telling the counter for them, the third party, that they should waive the requirements in 1G this one time. I think it's kind of vague. I personally just think if 3 days is what the board's comfortable with, we should say they need to be received 3 days in advance. If 1 day is acceptable, we should say they need to be received by the day before the annual meeting. And that's pretty fair. And I know Jeff.
And Mark, this is Carl, and I agree with what Liz says. I mean, if we pass a resolution every year, or this year, or we'll have to do it next year. I mean, if there's an issue with the policy, then let's correct it now and have it stand for ever.
No, and I agree with you, Carl, and I don't think the issue is with the policy. The issue is with the post office currently.
Well, and I understand that, but I think that Kristen relayed that this is confusing to the voters, and if it's confusing to the voters now, it's going to be that way in the future. So, like I said, let's correct it and not worry about passing a resolution. And as Liz says, how is the members going to know that we passed the resolution?
Jeff, would you like this if we were to amend 1G and Bryson and Levi were to make sure that it actually complied with the state law, would you prefer to see that language next month, or would you want us to just strike the
postmarked
7 days before the election? Just strike that.
Well, like I said, we spent a lot of time and money on this, and I just don't want to go in and start clipping things out that maybe we haven't thought quite through today. So yeah, I would be more, I'd be a lot more comfortable with it if you guys want to take out postmarked. Well, let's have Levi and Bryson at least gloss over and say, yeah, that's fine. Okay. But like I said, we spend a lot of time, money on this, and I don't want to go in and start tweaking it without any thought.
Jeff, if we don't do something, are we going to run into some other timelines? Because our election's coming up in June. We're going to be, our March meeting, we'd be able to do it.
Yeah.
So as long as we do it by March, we won't have a problem with the current year.
I don't think so, Bryson. Does that sound like an okay plan? Okay.
Yep.
And then, sorry guys, I have one other suggestion. Under the deadlines, this has to be posted publicly, and if we have candidates, this is what they're going to be. This is the rule book, right? So it's good to have all these deadlines up front. We have in the past had the ability for members to drop off their ballots in person. I'd like to see something under deadlines about what's the deadline to drop your ballot off in person. And I think that is addressed later in the policy. It'd be nice to have it included up in the summary section as well.
And that will actually be augmented, the whole drop off, to where that you don't have to bring it into the office, since our offices are closed, to drop them off. We will have what looks like, or is similar to, like the old postal boxes, to where that it will say ballot drop off, and they can drop off their ballots in that. And we have one that I believe has been received in Granby, and so we are just working on placement and camera coverage in the event that somebody tries to do something that we don't want them.
Thank you.
I would say if your drop-off box is also blue, this is just the slow privatization of the postal service that people have been talking about for a long time.
It is not blue.
Okay.
So.
Okay, so we're going to bring that one back next month. Okay, thank you.
So then I think you need a motion to table it until March.
Move the table.
Got a motion to table by Liz.
Second.
Second by Kristen. Any further discussion on that? All those in favor? Okay, we'll see it back next month.
Okay, the DOE grant. I want to start off by thanking Kristen for giving us the first draft of the concept paper, as well as reaching out to a number of entities that would potentially partner with us to assist us on this. We worked on it quite a bit to get it to where one, it fit within the budget, but two, that it worked hitting some of the things that we believe they're looking for. We submitted the concept paper last Friday to make sure that because there's not a whole lot of time in between when you submit it, they tell you yes or no, and then you have to go and submit a much more formal, lengthier paper. Rob just sent me something from the DOE website that says that they've received it, but a decision has not been made yet. So today would have been the 7 days, and they said that they will make a decision within 7 days. So we will be waiting on that. But what we asked for is $7 million. We tried to incorporate some of the things that we have done as pilot projects, but on a much larger scale to create some connected homes. And I believe the number is somewhere in the 300 range that we're attempting to connect. We are looking at, expanding the solar charging network as well. And then the last item is that we have 3 electric vehicles included in this. One, a transit bus. One is another school bus, which is vehicle to grid, and then a delivery vehicle to demonstrate that smaller delivery vehicles will also work in a high altitude, cold weather climate. I'm sure I'm missing something, but those are the broad strokes of what we have attempted to do. We will have software that will basically take all of the inputs from all these different systems that run these different devices and aggregate it for us. Our plan is to, because of the nature of how many we are hoping to get, that we would utilize a third party to do the marketing and administration of accepting the applications, verifying them, and then sending them to us. The grant does require a 30% match. And what we are looking to do is, and what we told them is that we are matching that with our contribution or investment in the fiber backbone, which we believe also helps to improve connectivity and allow other devices that might not work in certain areas otherwise. So we have sent it in. We're just now waiting for DOE to come back to us and tell us whether or not they are willing to let us go to phase 2.
Good luck. I heard through the grapevine that they have over 800 applications. So it might take them a little while to get through the backlog. And if they even ask for a full application, that's remarkable. So thank you guys for putting the work in on this.
Yeah, thanks everybody for the time on it. Anything else for that, Mark?
No, not on that. On the strategic plan, this was on there because we had some discussion last month, provided the update to the strategic plan. There was, I believe it was Carl that suggested that we do updates every 3 months as opposed to 6 months. He also suggested the possibility of doing another strategic plan meeting at some point here in the near future. So we put this on there to see if there's any additional discussion. Like I said, we did the update, the full update last month. We are changing the layout of the staff reports to provide more focus on the work that's being done to achieve the strategic goals and objectives. But we put this on there to see if there is any other discussion or potential changes that the board would suggest related to the strategic plan.
Okay.
Okay.
Mark, let's take a break. It's 9:40-ish. Let's back at 9:50. Give everybody 10 minutes to take a quick break. Does that work?
Jeff, this is Carl. One comment for Mark on the strategic plan. My suggestion of having an update or doing it more frequent, and Mark mentioned that we need to have a facilitator there, and I'm not sure why we need to have a facilitator if we're just doing a update or a review or whatever you want to call it. You know, at a certain interval, whether it be every year or 6 months or whatever it might be, until we go to I think it was 3 years. I think we need probably a facilitator at that point in time, but I'm not sure why we need that if we do a review or an update or whatever you want to call it.
Well, did we pay for that service last time, Mark?
We did not.
Yes.
It's free.
So Carl, I guess my question would be, why not have somebody there to help us through that process, even if it is just the update? You know, if we.
Well, and my impression was that we paid for it. So if we don't have to pay for it, or that expense is not added to it, then I agree with you.
Okay. Liz?
Yeah, I feel like we're finally, I mean, we really finalized the strategic plan last April, probably, with the matrix and whatnot. I feel like we're just getting you guys are just getting your feet under you, and you're ticking away at stuff. And, you know, I like the manager reporting format. I feel like that gives us an idea of how those, you guys are supporting those goals and objectives and how you're moving forward. And I'm kind of like, you know, we talked about the wildfire mitigation plan, developing that. We're doing the outage management system. We're working on all these things. And I'm like, I don't know why we would like stop and reevaluate right now. I would prefer that we go another, you know, maybe we continue to get updates, but that we not change the plan right now. I don't really see what the benefit would be to go back and look at those goals. And I mean, it's a 3-year plan.
Yeah, I agree with what. Go ahead, Carl.
I agree with you, Liz, but there's some updates that I think that come along in that 3-year time frame that might change or tweak a goal that we set 3 years ago. And one example that I would bring up is the issue of 125 and building a expensive line to service a remote customer, which when there might be a better alternative to doing that. And so that was just my suggestion, is to review it and see if we need to tweak things off and on at the board level and go from there.
And it's Justin.
Go ahead, Justin.
I mean, I agree with Carl and Liz, but I feel like maybe September timeframe would be good. There's a potential for 3 new board members. We have 2 new key employees at the organization also. So just helps bring everybody back together with what was set in motion last April with new players potentially.
Yeah, that's a good point, Justin. And, you know, I was going to bring up too, given what's been thrown at our staff and employees, you know, over the past year, we've still done quite a remarkable amount on that strategic plan, I feel. So, you know, pushing it out, like Liz said, maybe a little bit further, and for Justin's reason, might, you know, there might be a little bit more to at least evaluate at that point and talk about. Carl, were you okay with, say, Justin's timeline of maybe like a September or something in that range?
Oh, I totally agree, and I think Justin is right. I mean, I didn't make the suggestion that we had to do it tomorrow. I mean, but I think we need to have that review process a little more often than 3 years. That's all. That was my point.
Okay. Well, we'll evaluate that moving forward, I guess, what that will look like. All right. Anything else on that? All right, let's be back here at 10.
Isn't it a little early in the day to be drinking, Jeff?
Limeade.
Oh, okay.
No, yeah, there's no tequila or anything in there. Kind of looks like it.
Hey, Jeff, did they ever figure out the expense report, the automated one yet? Do you know?
No, they haven't. I'll talk about that, Dick. We'll just go back to our regular, how we did it a couple months ago, so we can get everybody caught back up. But
Okay. Yeah, I had just dropped mine off to Michelle and she was saying she's waiting to hear from you, and that's cool. You know, was just curious as to how we're going to do it this time, and just fill out a blank one and email it to you, and then you sign it and send it off. Is that what you like?
yeah, we can talk about it. Let's let everybody get back on, and then.
Okay. Cool. God damn it.
Oh. Was that Nick? We heard you. Must have been the dog.
Yeah, first time I was in there to see how nice it looked.
Hey, Dick,
You
you're
might-
on mute.
You might want to mute your computer, Dick.
Hey, Joe did it.
All right, well, it's 10 o'clock. Let's get back after it. I was going to bring this up later, but I'll bring it up now. Dick had mentioned it. So staff's working on whatever that form's going to look like, our per diem form, as far as getting that electronically done. We're not there yet. So I think we'll do is just go back to the way Michelle had done it. Will it be 2 months ago, right, Michelle?
Last month was,
Last month.
yeah, 2 months ago. Sorry. Yes. December.
So if you could just send out the sheet, and then everybody get caught back up on it last month and this month. And then if you can't sign them or you're having trouble with that, just let me know and get them back to me, and then we'll get them submitted. And we'll start using that new format just as soon as they get it up and running. So,
Michelle, do you have the new Excel spreadsheet one that I did?
Yes, I do.
If you could send that one, that'd be great.
okay. Liz, did you have something?
Well, I was going to say, if it comes in a PDF, one thing that I've realized is if I just go to the markup tool, I can actually put the dates in and then sign it, and I never have to print it and scan it and email it back. So it just makes it easier.
Right.
So if people are comfortable doing that, I don't know what the form will look like that Stacy, the new one. Anyway, that's just an option if you don't feel like printing and scanning. Just use that markup tool, and then you can send it in.
I actually had it all fillable, so you could just click on it and should be able to just type too.
Okay,
and then if you set up your own electronic signature, you should be able to sign. So I did have the fields in there so that you could do that. And I'll make sure that it's in the next one as well.
Great.
Okay. Levi, what are you doing here?
Bryson got a call. He's got a family emergency going on. So,
hope everything's okay.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll see.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
If we are ready, we will move on to Basin Touchstone membership. We sent out a document to the board to see the benefits and the cost of each of the two, Basin and Touchstone. After staff's review, we believe that the benefits currently outweigh the costs. One thing that is not on there, because it came in after we had put this together, is We had been using a company called lynda.com for training for staff. There's kind of an unlimited number of trainings that staff can do. And lynda.com was actually bought by LinkedIn. And so it's now a LinkedIn product. And it comes with our, I believe, Touchstone membership that we're able to utilize this training tool for employees. It is no cost, no additional cost to be able to use this. Joe had done some research into getting individual licenses to utilize the project or product and what it would cost. And the licenses are about $1,000 a piece. Now, whether or not we would need to buy one for everybody in the company is a question, or whether we could potentially buy 10 and utilize them for everybody in the company. So staff's recommendation related to this is that we continue our membership for at least a year. We will continue to look at the services that we get from them and see if there are other providers that we could go to be able to do the same thing at a similar or lower cost. Liz did, in a conversation I had with her, bring up that, you know, if we at some point move to an alternative power supplier, we're going to have replacements for this anyway, because we won't be able to utilize Basin and Touchstone in that particular instance. So if there are any questions, be happy to try and answer those questions. Seems
Doesn't look
not,
like it, Mark, so I guess we continue with Basin.
We need a motion because we have to notify Basin that we're staying, and I believe, oh, it didn't make it on here, but there was a document. If we decided to leave, we have to notify them by Sunday, which is kind of an odd day, but that we would be leaving. So I think if the board passes a motion, then we'll tell them that we are staying. And my understanding from Dwayne Hiley, when he was explaining this in one of the CEO town halls, is this is potentially a month to month. So if we found something that we liked better, we could give them notice and leave fairly quickly. If we then decided we didn't like it better, we could give them notice and come back. And so I'm not quite sure why they are looking for the, you know, formal resolutions on stuff, because it seems like they will let you bounce in and out. But I think Liz may have had a question or comment.
No, I was just going to move that we continue with, well, that we remain a Basin member and Touchstone member for 2021.
Thanks, Liz. We have a motion by Liz. A second by Justin. Any further discussion on that? Okay, all those in favor? Anybody opposed? Okay, motion carries.
Okay, the next item up is a request from the Middle Park High School for financial assistance, and they don't give a specific amount other than they tell us what the total cost of the project is, and as much as we would be willing to fund from the education fund. For new helmets for the football team, there are 40 helmets that they are looking to buy. The total cost of the project is $18,000. They have done other revenue raising events and received private donations as well as money from the Grand Foundation in order to help fund this. So if the board did approve something, I would say that we approve it, that management talk to them to find out what, assuming that, you know, it's a larger amount, because I don't think we necessarily want to say we'll donate we'll do $18,000 and they've already raised 12. So really what they need is 6.
Mark, they were requesting 10,000.
Oh, 10? Okay.
Well, being someone who coached and dealt with head injuries, I would recommend that this community invest in things that protect people's brains. So I'm actually in favor of this. I don't know what the rest of the board feels like, but I think it's pretty important. If there's going to be football, we ought to have good helmets.
Exactly. That was a motion, Liz?
Yep, move to approve 10,000 for the.
Thank you.
football helmet.
Motion by Liz and a second by. Second by Kristen. Any further discussion on that? Okay, all those in favor? Anybody opposed? Okay, motion carries.
Okay, the next item up, there is no document attached to it, is discussion of the Nr Eca resolutions. I believe that we sent those out, or Dick sent them out, and Dick requested that we put this on here in case anybody on the board had a question about any of the resolutions that will be brought up at the Nr Eca meeting.
The resolution packet was quite large, and when I sent it, I believe it did not go through. So what I'm going to do is forward the site that the attachment is with, and then anybody could look at it and go over what they've approved and what'll be coming up. So I'll do that shortly. I just realized that with that large file, it didn't go through. So I apologize.
Dick, is there anything that you noted in there that you thought was particularly notable this year?
No, it's a lot like in the past, a lot of wordsmithing of things that happened in the past. They're doing more, they're stressing more towards renewable and how they handle those areas. I just think that with all of them there, it'd be better if everybody looked at them. And if you have a question, we can go over it at the next meeting. So I'll forward that, the site that has the attachment.
Dick, will there be time for that? When is that meeting? When is the annual meeting?
Well, they have their annual meeting. I believe it's in March. But what happens is that there's really not anything that anyone can do on these at this point, other than at the annual meeting, whoever's the representative can ask a question. I do not think there's any way to bring amendments at this point in time. That usually happens during the summer and at our Region 7 meeting when we have discussions. This has taken the compilation from all of the region meetings, and the board will now, they have their meeting, and now they will approve these resolutions at the next meeting. I think it was more or less for informational purposes, or if someone wants to bring up a change in the next cycle. So there's nothing that probably happened. Even if you brought it up, the chances of having any changes at the annual meeting are, I would say, probably zero. Once their board approves the recommendation, or the committee, the board usually just goes ahead and approves it.
But there can be amendments from the floor too, right?
They can be, but I have seen only one time in the past at the annual meeting where they've done that. And normally that happens in the regional meetings, which happen in the fall.
Okay, so yeah. So back to my question is, when is the annual meeting then?
I believe it's March. The Nr Eca annual meeting, I believe it's March. I'm not sure the date.
Let me try to Google it real quick. I think Jeff might be right. It might be before our next meeting.
Yeah, I think it is. So
I
mean,
it could
be. We can still communicate to you via email, but if you know, we need to have it on the agenda for next month or not.
Yeah, that's okay. I will forward the link and make sure that you guys could look at it if you want to. It's pretty long, but you know, if you have something that you feel is really important that you want to stress, we could always bring something up. I do not know who our Nr Eca rep is going to be at that meeting.
Wait, we're voting on that now, right? Or this meeting?
Well, I did not see that coming up on here, and that's why I was wondering if we've assigned someone to take care of that.
I think that's you. That's you, Dick.
Yeah,
Is
I
it me?
believe it was at the January meeting, and I think it was you.
Okay. Well, if you have things, I'll send it out. You can get back to me, and I will be in attendance at that meeting.
Yeah, and I believe I'm the alternate.
Okay.
All right, so you're gonna get that stuff out to us, Dick?
Yep, I will do that shortly. As soon as we're done with the meeting.
I'm just looking at this, the email that NRECA sent out, and they said, if you have questions regarding the proposed resolutions, we invite you to attend the virtual proposed resolution forum hosted by the committee from 3 to 4 Eastern on Tuesday, March 2nd. So
Could you send the link for that? I might like to join that.
you bet. I'll send this to everybody.
Sorry, I have a beginner question.
Oh.
Are we automatically members of NRECA? Like, do we have to pay dues to them?
We do pay dues, yes.
And is that like similar to the basin dues?
No, I think the number is slightly higher.
Okay.
Stacy, do you know what our NRECA dues are?
I can look it up here real quick and make sure I give you the right number.
If I remember correctly, I think it's about 40,000 a year.
Okay. And does any portion of that go to their political action fund, or is that just NRECA dues?
It's NRECA dues, and I guess theirs, I think, is acre. Is it, Dick, is it care or acre? I think it's acre.
Acre is theirs, and none of the dues go to that branch. If you want to do something, their resolutions usually are where they wind up giving those to Congress. But no, none of our dues are allocated to their political action.
Now, the NRECA staff does, I think, lobby. I mean, obviously, the head of NRECA is talking to Congress. He testifies before Congress. They send letters. They lobby on behalf of co-ops, but the actual contributions to candidates comes from the Political Action Committee.
Right. And the resolutions are basically where they get their marching orders for how to address Congress on the issues that NRECA and the co-ops are in favor of or against. So that's basically the process. When you review these are the items that the lobbyists go to Congress and try and get our input into bills that are coming up.
And as far as I'm concerned, the resolution process is like the most convoluted process ever invented in Earth. And so, like, unless you really feel strongly about something and you're willing to spend 3 or 4 years, like really getting into the nuts and bolts and working it and understanding the process,
it's very convoluted. It goes to the national, then the co-ops and the statewides have input during the summer. Then the regions vote on resolutions to adopt in the fall. And then it goes back to the NRECA board and their committees. They had their committee meeting, I think it was last month, when they finally adopted these. And now they'll go back to the board for final approval. It's very convoluted. It takes a year or two to get things in. And from what I've seen over the past 4 or 5 years, most of it is wordsmithing. And never bring up the word ethanol, because ethanol is not considered a biofuel. It's separate. And don't ask me why, but I spent a few hours at one meeting asking the question why we have ethanol and biofuels. They took the word ethanol out after an hour or two of discussion. The following day, when they had the vote, it took 2 minutes to put it back in. So there's a strong lobby for including ethanol as a separate category of biofuels. That lets you know, and this has come up over the last 3 years, every time it's the same thing.
I would expect our Midwesterners would be putting that forward.
Yes, and so it is very convoluted, and what Liz says is correct. Unless you have something you're really willing to spend the time and energy on, you probably will have very little effect.
Yeah, not that I think Mountain Parks could have any effect, but it seems like debt relief for stranded assets could be something that NRECA could get some traction on in the next few years.
This summer, if you wish to bring that up, it goes to CREA, and CREA will forward it to NRECA. So if that's something you're interested in, and if the board wants to go and look at that, we could put a proposal together, and then CREA would forward it to the resolutions committee.
Well, they'll either endorse it or they won't.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. They'll endorse.
I don't think it has to go through CREA either.
Well, most of it usually does.
Yeah.
You muted yourself, Dick.
Was Carl going to say something? I see he's off mute.
Yes, I would like to say something. I was wondering, I was going to ask Mark, if it's not too much trouble, I would like to see a sheet next month, just like the basin report was, of what the advantages of our membership of NRECA is. I mean, honestly, I question what value we're getting out of them. And so I'd like to see a sheet of what the benefits actually are, and maybe have a staff evaluation if it's not too much trouble. And I'm not trying to put more work on staff, but it would probably help me a little bit to understand what benefits we're getting out of NRECA.
So Carl, I had done that back in 2018, 2019, and I'd be happy to do an update, and it's not a large ask. That's not a problem. I can include it in my report next month.
I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Hey, Dick, just to go back to NRECA, that annual meeting is February 23rd, 24th, and then March 2 and March 4th. So you're muted. Can't hear you.
First one, I believe, are the committees, and the second one is the actual meeting.
Okay.
If I'm not mistaken. I have them on I just looked up at the calendar. I've got them on the calendar. It's just, I haven't seen the timing. I'm not going to sit on their meeting for 2 days listening to a lot of different things. I mean, I'll go in on some of the stuff, but a lot of it it's just going to be, people making presentations and guest speakers. And to me, virtually, that's not really something that helps out. So Jeff, I'll let you know what my intentions are with respect to the meetings.
Okay, thanks. Okay, anything else on that? If not, we'll move down to K, Mark, Director Election.
Okay, the third party that we're using is SBS. And Levi and Rob had a conversation with them and went over a number of topics, and Levi came up with a couple of things that he thought we needed board input on in order to make a decision and let SBS know. So the first one is that the ballot is completely anonymous, and SBS has no way to tie the ballot back to a member. And the envelopes are followed, all but one Colorado co-op follows this structure who partners with SBS. There is an option for us to have SBS put a sequence number on it. SBS would be the only ones that would have that information to be able to tie it to a specific member of ours. But that's the question, is do we want it to be completely anonymous and we don't know who the ballot comes from, or do we want a sequence number so that we can tie it back to a particular member if we want to?
And let me just add, there is a legal analysis for liability one way or another on these different options, but it's probably something we should discuss in executive session. And I know you guys try and do that all in one executive session. So you can discuss the various options now, but as far as the legal analysis, we can kick that to later in the meeting if you like.
Well, if there, Bryson, if there's legal analysis on some of these others as well, maybe it's easier for us to actually just move this to executive session.
Yeah, that's fine too.
Okay, so Jeff, we'll move this item to executive session so that we can get the legal advice related to these, because I think rather than have a long discussion about which one we want to do, only to find out that there's a legal reason why that doesn't really work for us, it probably is easier to do it both at the same time.
Okay, let's move it down. Looks like we need to ratify some things from last month.
Yes, we have 4 items to ratify from last month. The certificate of authorization for RUS, the revenue deferral board resolution, the Western United annual meeting delegate, and the adjusted budget, which was related to increasing the contributions by the $10,000. I would suggest that unless the board feels differently, that we just ratify these all at the same time. And I will let you know that number 2, revenue deferral board resolution, you'll notice that the next item is MPEI deferred revenue. And it's because after we sent in the resolution that we did, RUS said, oh, wait, there's a paragraph that we want in there that you don't have. So we are putting this back up for approval, and then we'll need to ratify the decision that we make this month, next month.
Is there any questions on 1 through 4? If there isn't, can we get a motion to ratify those 4 things? Dick said so moved. I think Liz did in a second in muted version. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor? Anybody opposed? Okay.
Okay, so if we now go to item M, the MPEI deferred revenue, this resolution probably looks very familiar because it's what we looked at last month, with the exception of the paragraph after the numbers that starts "and be it further resolved." RUS wanted that paragraph to be added to the resolution. They had given us the other one first, but they now decided that they want this paragraph added in there. It's what we do anyway with segregating the money, recording it at the way that they want, and then they have to approve our resolution, which they were close to doing before somebody decided we needed to add another paragraph to it. So if there are any questions, I will attempt to answer them, but basically we're doing the same thing we did last time. It's just that we added a paragraph to it.
Well, then I need those.
Looks like we'll have to get Kristen in to sign that as well.
Yes.
It's open tomorrow.
Yes, but because we are closed on Monday because it is President's Day, and I was trying to schedule meetings, and it was Jessica that reminded me that it was a holiday, and what I believe are kind of non-consequential holidays, I don't remember those. Christmas, Thanksgiving, I can remember. The other ones I generally forget about and end up trying to schedule meetings. So
I'll swing by tomorrow then. If this could be at the front desk drive-through, I'd appreciate it.
Yep.
And I'll try to go in too so that I can get the other paperwork for you to sign, Kristen.
Thank you kindly, Michelle. Appreciate that.
I move to approve the resolution to implement the revenue deferral plan.
Motion by Liz, second by Mark Volt. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor? Okay, looks like the motion carries. Engineering.
Okay, we are into staff reports. You have the engineering staff report, and as I said, it's in the new format. If there are any questions, Scott or I are available to answer any questions you might have related to it.
I like it.
Yes.
In the format. Thank you, Scott.
Does anybody have any questions for Scott? Carl? Okay.
No, I don't.
Scott, did you have anything to add?
He says no.
He's
I
trying
have
to
a
say.
hard time finding the unmute button. No, I do not.
Okay, thank you, sir. All right, let's move on to operations and safety report.
Okay, for this month, and this will be the last month that Scott will do this, we will then turn them over to Dawn and Brian. You have the operations report there first. And so if there are any questions on that, we can answer those or try to answer those.
Congrats to the linemen who passed their journeyman test.
Thank you.
Mark, I have a question.
Yes.
Maybe it's maybe directed more to Dawn, and I brought this up in the past, and I'm not really I guess the SADI report, in your experience, is that a good representation of mountain parks?
And I will take a shot at it and then let Don, with his experience, do it. Based on my work with other electric utilities, I will say it can be a good representation of the outages. It's not necessarily that because some systems, I know Don came from an area where they had a 4 kV system that was very old, and they potentially had a number of outages, and so their SADI number probably was not that good. It didn't mean the system didn't work. It just meant that it was very old. It was hard to fix. But this is a measure of how we, how we compare with other utilities related to outages. Now, obviously, you see that 2020, it's skewed way out of bounds, and that's part of the issue that you might have with SADI, is that it was an unusual event that caused that number to be way out of bounds. And a utility can have a number of unusual events, depending on where they're located over time, which will make their SADI look worse than a similarly situated utility that's in a different location. And so I think it is useful, but I don't think that you can depend on it to be the end all be all. So with that, I'll let Don add whatever he would like to.
Yeah, I would have died for some of the SADI numbers that you've had in the past recent years in my previous role, with just because of the amount of outages that Mark was talking about. We track SADI, and we also track SAFE, which was the frequency of outages, which really was pretty good, and it helped me identify a lot of the trouble areas, a lot of the places where people were having the frequent outages, and we were also tracking momentaries, which in today's world of everybody working from home and computers and things of that nature, momentaries have become a big issue. So there's some things that I'll look at in the future. I like these SADI numbers. We used to exclude some of those large events like you had in 2020 with executive approval. We would exclude some of those large events. to be able to really show the accurate numbers. You know, those would be a footnote, obviously, to make sure that everybody knew we had this major event. But we'll continue to look at, you know, some of the metrics and see how we can refine them and you know, just give more information to the board and our members.
Is there another metric to measure safety and reliability of the system besides SAIDI?
Well, there's SAFE, like I talked about, like with that does the frequency, and then there's MAFE, which actually tracks a lot of the momentaries too. And we started to go to, and I'm gonna be terrible at the acronym, but it's CD, and and it actually tracks a lot of times minutes, you know, of outages, kind of the same as the duration. So we'll look at some of them and see what's the best and throw them out there.
Okay, thank you.
There's two things, like as a board, we sort of want to make sure that our system's performing well. But the other side of that is you guys being able to have the tools to identify various feeders and distribution lines and really look at those closely so that you can, you know, so this SAIDI might be kind of a 30,000 foot overview for us, but hopefully now we have the tools where you guys can really look at performance of each geographic area that we serve.
Agreed.
Well, and that is part of what we are getting now from NISC. The information is only going to get better as we continue to refine the system, but to allow Scott and Don to look at, you know, areas that we have issues, to see if we have underloading or overloading of transformers, you know, if you have, you know, significant voltage loss for some reason or voltage fluctuation. And so that's going to help us to get to a place where potentially, and we did this in Anchorage, we got to predictive maintenance so that the system would tell us, you have a serious problem here and you need to fix it, because if you don't, it's going to cause an outage or something worse. And so we went to using the predictive analytics to define some of our major maintenance issues that we dealt with as a utility. And I don't know, Don, if you guys did, I think you mentioned that you guys did that in Iowa.
Yeah, we did the exact same thing, and we actually started what we consider to be a life extension program due to that predictive maintenance, and, you know, actually looking at 10% of the whole entire system annually and working through that life extension, and we were able to capitalize a lot of the dollars that way too. So.
And this is Carl again, and I applaud what you're doing, because SAIDI to me is a after the fact metric, and going to a predictive metric some nature, I think deserves applause. So thank you.
Mark, is Scott doing this safety report as well?
He does. If we are done with the operations report, you can scroll down. It is the last page, is the safety report. And since we didn't have one included, or this piece wasn't included, he did talk about near misses in January.
Does anybody have any questions on the safety report? We do need to get a motion to approve that if everybody's good with it. Got a motion by Liz, second by Dick. Is there any further discussion? Safety report. Okay, motion carries.
Okay, we will move on to the finance report. Again, in the same format, and we are willing to take any questions you might have. And I think Stacy may have a comment or two that she wants to add as well. So.
Yeah, I just have one comment on the financials that you received in your packet or that you see. They're preliminary financials. At the point in time where those were put together and uploaded, we didn't have the tri-state allocation. I got that number yesterday. I had budgeted and we had projected $1 million, and it actually came out to 516,000. So less than what I had budgeted. And then they are also preliminary because we're just going through making sure all the tree removal invoices that we had expensed were correctly coded to the work order versus the expense account. So that looked like it was a significant number that Kristen in operations is working on for us. So that's all I have for that. I do have one ad I wanted to touch base with. Mark mentioned I did last week pull it. I did request $10.8 million in loan reimbursement funds from RUS. Decided to do that with the upcoming projects, the $3 million in the solar project. If this third-party financing doesn't work out in the fiber, we're going to need additional money for that, and then the fire rebuild. So like Mark said, we decided to go through and get that money now because the interest rate was just under 1%.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Stacy. Any questions for Stacy? Liz?
I think Liz wants a loan under 1%.
Just a quick question. When you said the tri-state allocation, do you mean line 26, the capital credit part that they?
Yes.
Okay. As opposed to, okay. Good.
Capital credits, yeah.
And I think Justin maybe had a question.
I saw March 10th, are the auditors coming March 10th? Or are you working on a plan on how to facilitate them?
They will actually be here. They are traveling. They are going to come. Mark and I went back and forth on, we're going to try and do virtual or in person. They will be in person. So, yep, March 8th, 9th, and 10th, they'll be in the office. And on the 10th, like I put in my board report, is usually when we do the summary of their preliminary findings. So as much as the audit committee or treasurer, you know, your involvement, I'll communicate their plans on that to you, Justin, if you'd like.
Yeah, I wanted to, I mean, as a board, hopefully have some direction on when, obviously there's never a best time, but I don't want to have to be in the office for 3 days if I'm not needed during certain times of that. But I'm not that familiar with their process in depth. So,
well, and we can do that meeting, that exit meeting virtually, so that you don't necessarily have to come into the office. We're going to put the auditors in the community room. There's significant space, and there's not that many of them, so that we can spread them out, and we'll limit employee access. What?
They'll be in the boardroom. Scott has a community room right now for his engineering remodel.
Oh, okay, so there's not that many of them, and they'll be in the boardroom instead, because there is enough space for them to spread out. We will attempt to limit access between the auditors and employees as much as possible. Not that we don't want to provide the information, but we don't want to have employees interacting with people from outside. So we can do, I think, a lot of the stuff that needs to be done fairly easily. But final meeting we can do virtually, so that, I mean, you can come in if you want to, but you won't necessarily have to.
No, I'm fine coming in. I have no reservations about that. Just more if you could keep me in the loop with the timing.
Okay. And we will provide the information to the other board members if anybody else is interested in attending either in person or virtually.
And Stacy, not to interrupt, but Kristen will be in tomorrow to sign those documents, and then I'll need Mark and Jeff to schedule with me to get the other ones. I'll probably just have them at the front so you can just drive up.
All right.
Any other questions on the finance report?
Looks like you're up, Joe.
Information technology. You've got the report in the new format, and Joe and I would be happy to attempt to answer any questions you may have.
Did you just want to elaborate at all on the Connexion stuff? I know we went over that a little bit. That seemed to be a big hot topic last time.
So I don't have a lot to add other than when we reached out, we couldn't, they refused, and rightfully so, to talk about any of their plans, their strategy, anything else. It is, you know, mandated in the FCC auction to participate in the auction, that once the auction's over, there's a quiet time, a prohibited communication period. That period ended with the filing of the major part of their, what they call a long form application, which was on, I think it was due to the FCC by 6 o'clock on January 29th. I did hear from them, I think it was Tuesday of the following week, which would be like February 2nd. I tried to get a meeting with them scheduled prior to this meeting, but schedules just didn't align. I guess they have quite a few folks in the queue to talk to. So we are on the schedule for next Tuesday, I believe at 11 Mountain Time. And hopefully we'll have more information to share after that with what their intentions are, what their plans are. If you have done any research or internet lookups on this whole process, the opinions are wide ranging, and now Nr Eca is in the mix asking for a higher degree of scrutiny on how these funds are going to be spent and who's going to get them and what their intentions are, and if they actually can even follow through with these plans. So we'll see. I don't believe that the amount of funding that they're getting would truly enable what they're claiming to be able to do. However, Connexion maintains the position that they can build these networks for substantially less than traditional costs. Scott might remember a little bit as well in our in the presentation we had with them several years ago. It sounded as if they forego a lot of the process, like they don't worry about make ready and some of the other things, other costs that are associated with it. They simply string the fiber, hook people up, and kind of worry about the consequences and the process later. Now, obviously, that does reduce costs significantly. I don't know if the end justifies the means approach like that is the right one, though. We'll know more after Tuesday.
All right, thanks.
Any other questions for Joe? Okay. Jessica.
Any questions on my report?
I'm sure we'll have many in executive session.
I was going to ask Joe, am I going to be able to share my screen in executive session to show them kind of what our options are for a few things? Yeah, okay. Okay, yep. So I've got all that ready for executive session.
Okay. All right. Member relations and communications, Rob.
Whatever questions you have. Report, and I you know, ready to answer any questions. And don't know that we have anything else to add. Rob, did you have anything else you wanted to add to any of the things? I know that we got in some information after the reports have been filed, the e-bus, which we talked about. So, and then the event in Kremlin. So.
Rob, did they get their charging in place for the bus? Sure.
Yes, they did. Yep. I believe it was last week that was finalized.
What do you anticipate? How are they gonna? Are you privy to like how they're gonna test it? Are they gonna
testing the bus?
Yeah.
Or the
as
truck.
far as-
Okay, yeah,
Now it's
so
working.
they're doing the aftermarket fixes now. The last I heard, there will be a day when they're inviting the transportation people from the school district down to Denver before it arrives in Kremling to sort of do some training from the Bluebird rep. That's the manufacturer of the bus. And then they're expecting the bus actually to arrive up in Kremling as early as the end of next week or potentially the beginning of the following week. And so we are scrambling to coordinate. Now, we knew this would be a short timeline and turnaround, but we are having weekly meetings with Tri-State in coordinating this event. And right now we have a tentative date of the event as Monday, March 1st. So we hope to be able to announce very shortly that that is indeed the date that we will do the media event and have the people that were financial partners in the project speak, and then be able to offer bus rides to people and get video footage. Tri-State is handling all of that, so they can make a video that we will be able to use as well about the project. And Tri-State is also coordinating with the regional, I should say, the Denver media to see if we can get some of those folks to join at the event.
Fantastic. I want to pass along some compliments that I heard up here. Some people had heard some of the latest Mountain Parks ads on like electric snow blowers. They loved them. I'd like to know where I could get one too now. And very cool to see in your report that there's going to be some more companies locally offering heat pump installs. I think that's very needed up here. That seems great. One other question I had for you, Rob, is I heard a rumor that down here in Winter Park Fraser area, there might be plans in the works to electrify the bus fleet. Are you aware of that? Anything you can share?
No, what I do know is that Chris reached out to them and made them aware of the Alt Fuels grant opportunity. So he's talked to them about that grant. I know that Liz sent out the email about the bus that came up that they tried out. Chris was part of that. So some of the town officials and the transit authority people went on the ride along. Chris did as well, and was able to ask a number of questions about the bus itself and its capabilities and its potential vehicle to grid applications, which the manufacturer said that transit buses typically are not real good candidates for that because of the long hours that they run. But anyway, so there were those discussions. I believe Chris shared that it also came up that they were asking questions about the Kremling bus and the funding. And so Chris shared a little bit about the funding partners that allowed that to happen. So I believe he mentioned that we do have this education fund as a possible potential partial funding. He didn't make any guarantees on that, but said it would need to be a request made to our board.
I just, from my conversation with a Fraser trustee, who, Fraser's somehow a partnership with the Winter Park Transit Authority. I mean, I think there's a lot of interest in electrifying their fleet. That bus was up here for 2 days. So one day it spent with officials checking it out, but the second day it actually ran the route.
Oh.
So that it followed the regular bus and ran the routes just to see how it worked. So they, I thought that was interesting. And Chris did mention to Jeff's question, we just had a Green Power board meeting, so we heard some of this stuff, that the West Grand bus folks, transportation folks will go down to Denver and have extensive training on that bus before it comes back up here, so that they'll be fully trained up on all its systems and have plenty of opportunity to get to know it and ask the reps. So I feel pretty comfortable that there shouldn't be any surprises for them. So that's what I know about buses. I think also I think as the transit authority thinks about whether they're going to electrify, that will impact how they design their transit center that's going to be built. So that's all in process right now.
Okay. Rob, you got anything else?
Nope.
Anybody got anything, any questions for Rob? Okay, bills for payment. Questions? Good, none? All right.
One,
Okay.
not on a specific bill, but I've noticed a number of large payments with regards to our insurance. I'm wondering if anybody is running an analysis of the payments that are coming out with versus what our normal previous premiums were, to see how we're running with the new insurance system. I just wonder if we're looking at that.
So I was going to be doing an analysis and providing it to you all for this board report. And then Mark and Stacy and I were going through and talking about some of these items, and we remembered that we chose to extend the plan year from July 1st to June 30th for this transitional period. So what that means is that we've paid quite a few more claims in the first 6 months than we'll see in the second 6 months. So we are tracking it. We've asked our broker, Frank, and GPA and ELAP to give us a presentation. I think it's February 25th on the plan performance. The maximum out of pocket that we can be exposed to with our reinsurance, so that's that additional stop loss of $20,000 per person. There's an aggregate maximum on that, and so we cannot pay more than what we paid with Nr Eca. It's a little bit less. We were hoping, obviously, to realize a lot more savings than that, and we are not certain, looking at the plan year as a whole, where we are at, which is why we're asking them to do that summary for us in a couple weeks. So we will have more news on this potentially for the March board report. But really the true analysis is going to come in July or August after we've had that full plan year.
Okay. Thank you.
Justin.
Off the top of your head, what was our total, what was the maximum for all of our employee base on the out of pocket for the year?
For Nr Eca?
No, with our new plan, the new plan.
I believe it's around 900,000.
Okay. Just, I mean, we're at 220,000 over the last 3 months. So I was trying to figure where we're at.
And some of the bills have not been paid yet that you guys are seeing as the claims come in. There's the claims lag, so it takes a while for us to get the actual bills. And then another significant portion of it is the way the process works is that we pay all the claims up front, even those that are above our stop loss, and then the stop loss carrier reimburses us for that. That's so that providers do not have to wait longer for payment. That's a process that we're also going to discuss in a couple of weeks with the carriers to make sure that this is the best way for us to be doing it and talk about pros and cons of that approach. But we're looking at reimbursements in the amount right now, it's about 143,000 that are outstanding.
Jessica, who does the review prior to paying these claims? In other words, you say we're paying them before we get reimbursed. Who's doing the review? Is that the people, Vanitex, that's doing the review before we pay anything?
Yeah, so the way that the process works is GPA is the claims administrator, but then ELAP, if you remember that acronym, they're the ones that work with GPA to audit all the bills. So ELAP audits the bills, comes up with an amount that they're going to pay based on a formula that they have. And then they provide that payment to the provider. Well, they provide us with information about what that payment will be, and then we pay the claims to GPA, and then they pay the provider.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions, bills for payment? All right, moving on. Open board forum and associated board reports. Liz, you said you had a GPAC meeting.
Yep, the Green Power met on Tuesday. There were 6 applications for rebates, 5 were approved. 1, they didn't really fill out the application, so we asked them to try again. One thing that I wanted to let you guys know about is last year's Green Power was going through sort of the future and the amount of money and all of those things. The Green Power had decided to spend about $4,500 in 2021 on weatherization in our area. So I reached out to the weatherization provider for our area, which is Northwest COG, which is the Council of Northwest Colorado Council of Governments. There are 2 things you guys should know. One is weatherization is sort of a general term, but it's also a very specific term, and it's a federally funded program, and it's very tight design about health and safety and the measures that can be installed and how the houses have to be audited. So when we say weatherization, it could mean either sort of generally improving your houses or this very specific program. The very specific program doesn't have much federal funding, so there's maybe 1 or 2 houses that get done a year in our territory through that program. In Colorado, there's another program that provides weatherization generally services. That program, don't jump out of your chair, Dick, is also called the CARE program. And it is funded through utility donations. All those donations go to Energy Outreach Colorado, and then Energy Outreach Colorado administers the program through these weatherization providers. So in Mountain Parks Electric territory, Excel participates in that program. So Excel allocates so many dollars for low-income folks to upgrade their housing units if they have Excel gas. In other places around the state, say a place where they might have Excel gas, but Yampa Valley or Holy Cross is their electric provider. The electric provider also is donating money to that program. So when the weatherization agency comes in, if it's just Excel providing the dollars, they do the air sealing, insulation, but they don't look at the lighting, the appliances, any of the electrical side. The homeowner doesn't get that. If it's in an area where both the electric and the gas companies playing, they get the full gamut. So we're looking at spending that $4,500 to sort of match that, to provide that electrical half. So that would touch maybe 7 to 9 homes in Mountain Parks territory. The issue with this is that in Jackson County, there's no gas provider playing in the CARES program. And so we talked about whether it would be better to spend all $4,500 on one unit in Jackson County or do this CARES approach. Chris Tri-State has a match. It's not quite clear to me what it covers. So Chris will be reaching out with Northwest COG and Tri-State to figure out how we can maximize Tri-State money in this process. But that's ongoing. It's really, once we figure out the money part, it's out of Mountain Parks' hands. The applicants for these programs go through probably Mountain Family Center or the LEAP, and the agencies select who it is. We're just providing some funds to have the work done. So,
Liz, if I could ask you to summarize, like if someone who meets the income thresholds in our service territory wants to get their homes weatherized, who do they contact and what process do they have to go through? This sounds like a lot of hoops.
No, it's just one form. They can contact Mountain Family, or they can, I think Mountain Family has, if they call Mountain Family could connect them to how to fill out the form. The problem is I mean, we talked about advertising this program. In reality, there are no funds to do it. Like, it's very difficult, you know, if we really were to advertise it, there'd be a waiting list of hundreds of people who would want to do it. And we're doing, you know, the Excel portion is 7 homes a year. The weatherization or the CARES portion is 7 to 9 homes a year. The weatherization thing is maybe 1. So there's a form. Rob knows too. I think Rob's connected folks who've called mountain parks. There was someone who was very excited to finally buy her own place, and then the utility bill was very expensive, and I think he helped them fill out the application. But the application goes to Northwest Cog, and if they're 30th on the list, they're 30th on the list. You know, we don't have anything to do with who gets selected.
I'm joining the webinar. I don't know if y'all saw, I think there's a webinar tonight at 5:30 with our local representatives. And there's like block grants. There's a bunch of federal money that's supposed to go to each state to get divvied up for weatherization. And it just sounds to me like that's unjustly not being targeted to areas that might need it most.
So the weatherization money, at least in the past, I don't know about this fiscal year, goes to the Colorado Energy Office, and they look at the state and they bid out that work to weatherization providers on I don't know if it's a 5-year, 10-year process or time period. But I just think there hasn't been that much money for weatherization. We see a lot of weatherization being done through non-federal routes in Colorado. It's money that Excel is paying. It's, it's Yampa Valley and Holy Cross deciding they want to do it. Holy Cross applied for a grant from the Energy Office that would go above the federal weatherization dollars. So they weatherized the trailers. They did 3 trailers. And then they went on top of that. They got money to add heat pumps, heat pump hot water heaters, and induction ranges, so that they got all the combustion fuels out of those trailers, so that it's just cleaner and better air quality, and they have no health and safety issues. They've done 3 of them over in Eagle County. They went well. Unfortunately, Adam Palmer and Seth Bosing, who were working on that project, were in that Silverton slide. So that's it's going to stop for a little bit. But I think, I'm not really sure that there's a lot of money out there that, Northwest Cog is looking for every dollar they can to do this work. And so is the Colorado Energy Office. So I'm not sure that there's, there may be something coming down the pike that if they jump on, our members can benefit. But this is sort of just a get the ball rolling, see how we go. Since Mountain Parks doesn't contribute out of our operational budget to that CARE program, these dollars from Green Power can help match those dollars, and hopefully we can get some tri-state dollar in there too.
How come CARE doesn't come to us with a proposal for our education fund?
Well, we can think about that for, in the future. That's something they could do if the board wanted to entertain something like that.
So Liz, do you know with other co-ops similar size to us, what they end up contributing? I mean, even a round number?
I don't, good question. I know some of them just use that Roundup money. When Roundup was established, some of the co-ops just allocated all that money to weatherization. Ours is set up so we have our own charitable trust and its own board. So that board would, so I'm guessing, I wouldn't even want to hazard a guess what the normal co-op or the average one does. I can ask. I'll reach out to Energy Outreach Colorado and see what their what they're getting.
Well, actually, I can do the CEO listserv
Yeah,
and just ask the question, do you contribute? And if so, how much?
right,
And generally, most everybody will respond to that.
right, super. So there are two things, we contribute to the LEAP funding. And that's something that Mountain Parks has historically done since I've been on the board. And then there's this other program that's called CARE.
Okay.
Liz, I have a question for you, and I know you've talked about this before, but if somebody has to replace a roof with solar panels on it, like say due to the fire, what's the process? Is process the same? Will they submit their application? Will you guys look at that application, or what is the?
Yeah, we did talk about that if people had their installs wrecked, that they could reapply to green power. And I would think that if the system's okay, but they have to re-roof and there's a cost to, I mean, the board is very sensitive to the fact that people got grants, they've been members of the green power program, and then the fire, if it were a normal person, you wouldn't be able to reapply twice. But in this case for the fire, they can.
So they would just basically reapply.
Yeah, reach out to Chris, who administers that, and say, hey, here's the deal.
Okay, perfect. Anything else?
Some discussion, just some discussion on the DC fast chargers. As if people have noticed, there's an installation come and go. It's not operational yet.
The
Yampa.
bags are off.
Yeah, I don't think it's up. Well,
They're
maybe
not working?
it's operational.
No, it's not operational. It has not been connected. They gave us their application mid to late December, and we currently have a moratorium on trenching because it's so much more expensive during the winter. And we have reached out to them to see if they're willing to pay the additional cost to trench during the winter, and have not heard back from them.
They just paid their contract for the installation. I don't believe that's a winter installation, and they just paid it this week.
There was discussion that, well, I've been hounded a bit from the state and folks that they've really tried to get chargers in the remote corners of the state, for example, in Meeker and in Yampa. They're still interested in Walden. The town has, they have done surveys about how they want the lots along Main Street to be used. And I would say a charger has not risen to the top. So I think that the town is not all that interested in either providing land or support for a charger located on Main Street. And I don't think that that's going to change anytime soon. So that's sort of where we are with the Walden project. There's a lot of interest from other parts of the state to have it in Walden. There's less interest in Walden. Carl had talked to those business owners. They don't have room or the inclination to live by the grant parameters requirements. So anyway.
Liz, this is Carl. I learned a little bit of new information here a couple of weeks ago from my daughter. I don't know where she got it from, but that Colorado Division of Parks is going to try to put a charger on the state land board land up near Gould at North Michigan Reservoir. And I don't know any more about it than that, but that they were going to do it. So
yeah, I'm guessing that would be a level 2, not a level 3, because I don't think we have 3-phase out there.
yeah, and I have no idea what it is or anything else, but they wanted something, for recreation, and that would be very remote. but, and not usable for people passing through or anything else, but, just wanted to pass that on.
Thanks, Carl.
Stacy, did you have a question? Comment?
My dogs are barking now, but I just wanted to add that sorry about that. On our Electrify Everything program, there is an insulation weatherizing component of that. And as the co-op, we have decided, regardless of income, to contribute 100% of their capital credits if they're interested in doing that. So I just wanted to share that on Liz's comment of, and then from the charitable trust last year, we did, no, 2 years ago, we did give money for one of the trailers in Kremling to be winterized. So sharing that.
I had a question. I know the Solar Cares program has the potential to use capital credits. Can those also potentially be used for EV chargers?
They can, and actually the town of Fraser did use some of theirs to support their level 3 that they put in.
Okay, thanks.
Carl, I wanted to follow up too on that charger that you talk about out by Gould. Our system right now is not going to support a large DC fast charger out there. We have a single phase line for quite a few miles, and we have no 3-phase within miles of Gould. So it's, and when I've talked, I believe it was Liz I talked about several years ago, that it was not, the power is not easily available to do that. And so if the state is really interested in doing that, then we probably need to have some conversations with them to figure out what it is we would need to have in order to get them the service they need.
I think it's going to be a level 2, Scott. I think they're just going to have a little.
Okay, level 2 is not a problem.
I had talked to them, they had called me after you and I talked, and because there was a business owner out there who was interested in having it. And, I was like, well, if they, it's going to be millions of dollars, and the state's not in, no one's interested in that.
All right. Dick, do you have anything?
Yes, Western United had a meeting at the end of last month. Business is fantastic, even though they're having some problems with gas and oil areas. The construction boom is just driving everything. They are hopefully going to get their cable cutting machinery in. They had some legal problems with the company out of Houston, and now those have been resolved. They'll be getting that. Their St. George office construction has started. I don't know at what level it is, but they are moving ahead with their office in St. George, Utah. Aside from that, the newest financials, I just got them yesterday, so I haven't had a chance to review them. But from what I've heard, that their business is going well. There are no problems with them. We haven't had any board reports where we usually go around the meeting and find out what's going on at the different co-ops. They haven't had that in quite some time, just because of the virtual aspect of the meeting. So they're doing fine. The other meeting I attended, we had a virtual meeting for CARE committee. We did a, what do they call it? Not an autopsy, but
postmortem.
Postmortem, yeah, over the election results and the contributions that were made to some of the candidates. And there was some, I would say, very, very heavy discussions with respect to a few of the candidates that CARE had supported with respect to how they're conducting themselves. And I prefer not to go further than that, but they're reevaluating how they're handling the contributions in the future. And they're also getting ready for the annual, their annual meeting, which is on I believe the 9th of March. they'll have their care committee meeting as part of CREA's meeting. And so we had a lengthy discussion on all the different things and how care has been dealing with different aspects. And so there may be some adjustments to how they do things. And until decisions are made, that's about as far as I can go on that. Aside from that, that's all that's going on in my world and just getting ready for Nr Eca.
Okay, Carl?
Yes, Tri-State had a strategic planning meeting in February. We had 3 presentations that were very good. One from EPRI, and a couple of the notable things that came out of it, at least to me, that was mentioned, was given by Neva Espinoza from EPRI. Their prediction is in the coming decade, new modular nukes will be deployed around 70 megawatts per unit. They say that's coming. Another thing has been the hydrogen issue, that everybody's wanting to turn to hydrogen, but they said that hydrogen has about 1/3 the energy as natural gas. So they're looking into possibly blending hydrogen and natural gas to use in existing gas plants. Then we had a presentation from Terry, and I don't know her last name, from CoBank. Some of the highlights that she brought out, that 57% of customers are looking to create their own power source. 70% of the nation's power grid is at the end of life. Delivery is a big part of the cost and rates. DER is a solution, possibly. In 3 years, buying a gas-powered car will cost you more than an EV. Batteries will cost half of the cost today during this next decade. Then we had a presentation from the chancellor at New Mexico State University, who was on the Biden transition team. And he said that he didn't actually say it's a fact, but he says that Biden is probably going to look at a carbon tax, and that will be probably instituted here within his first term. Then we did have a brief explanation from Ken Reef, Tri-State's attorney, and they are looking at filing a formula rate instead of a stated rate at FERC. It won't happen probably for 2 or 3 years. A rate committee will have to be instituted before this all comes about. So that's something that's coming down the pike in the future, possibly. Let me see here. Dwayne Hiley talked about the open meeting law, that most co-ops, and we are included in that, or have to comply. Tri-State does not, but there's a new bill possibly going to be introduced in the legislative session this year to make Tri-State a part of that law, and they expect it will pass if it's brought up. Then at the board meeting on the next day, they're going to try to come up with a new board policy, 125. It really defines contract termination procedures. Some of the highlights that might be included in that would be no more than 3 calculations of a member's buyout per year. 180 days, the calculation would be good for. They said that in the policy also, the shown number will be given out every year to every member because it is very easy to compute, but it's only within probably a 10% range of the actual price. The filing with FERC does not allow each member to calculate their own number, the formula, and I'm not quite sure why that is, but that's the way it is. They expect the shown number to be released by this coming April to every member. The policy will be presented, and then they will want member feedback. And I think it was brought up at the member CEO meeting, and Mark can comment on that when I'm done here if he wants. The COVID restrictions have been downgraded. They're still talking to Excel about participation in a big transmission project on the Eastern Plains that would go from around the Pueblo area all the way to the Kansas-Colorado border and then back to the Front Range to kind of incorporate all the renewable generation that is occurring out on the Eastern Plains, mostly wind. They expect LRS to close down in the year 2035. And the PUC is going to develop a white paper on RTOs by 2022. And that, of course, is maybe changed because they're talking about introduction of legislation in the legislature again this year to require a lot of that. Some of the things that Brad Nevergall brought up, the Diablo Canyon 10,050 megawatt unit is going to be offline. They may have it back by mid-May, but probably not. They have, Tri-State has issued a reverse RSP for selling power. Forward pricing because of that and the issues that happened last year in California are approaching $175 a megawatt. Tri-State has made no sales. The We startup happened about a week ago, which means that 66% of the load at Tri-State is now in an imbalanced market. WAPA has not put hydro in the imbalanced market as of yet. And another thing is the PUC found our ERP deficient on January 25th, and they didn't provide any more information of why or anything like that. Most of the members are losing oil and gas load. December member sales were down 8%. Non-member sales were up 12%. And besides the executive session, that's about all I can report unless Mark wants to add some more from his manager meeting.
I have a couple of items. Dwayne Hiley talked about a telecommuting policy, which we obviously have looked at. Their policy would be 50% of the time that people could telecommute. They're still working through it at this point, but I think based on COVID and people working from home, they've seen that it can work, and so they are moving forward with that policy that they will bring to the Tri-State Board. With their cost-cutting measures, they have had employees that have been extremely involved in providing suggestions, options. But what they found is that many of the employees don't didn't know how to utilize the budget system that Tri-State has very well. So they've been doing extensive training with employees on that to help them understand the budget so that then they can, hopefully provide what the impact might be related to cost-cutting measures. Dwayne mentioned that the board meeting in March will be a hybrid board meeting that they will allow up to 25 members to be there at the meeting, and the rest will attend virtually. They don't have any idea at this point because they haven't sent it out to see who might be interested in attending, who might not. One of the things that he talked about and actually was then further discussed because of a couple of the New Mexico co-ops is there is a community choice aggregation bill in New Mexico that is moving through both the House and Senate. It allows municipals and tribal organizations to opt out of service from co-ops and IOUs and then self-provide. All the indications are that it is going to pass. It's not a question of if, it's just a question of when, because it's got quite a bit of support. It is not unlike the one that is being proposed in Colorado, but I don't know that it's actually been introduced at this point. One of the challenges that the New Mexico co-op said that they had with the CCA in New Mexico is that it doesn't sufficiently compensate the co-ops for the loss of business and then also for the equipment that was built to serve those particular members. So those were some of the things that Dwayne brought up during the CEO meeting, and we have the CEO town halls, I think, every 2 weeks. And then one of them is replaced with a CEO meeting, which is basically similar, except it's 6 times as long. So other than that, I don't know that I have anything else to add to the Tri-State update that Carl gave.
Anybody have any questions for Carl or Mark? Okay, I did have a CREA meeting. We do have sponsors for the wildfire bill and the co-op governance bill. So hopefully those will be moving forward. There was some movement in the governance bill as far as interjecting language about policies on conflicts of interest. So I'm sure some of that stuff will get added in, but I'm going to hope that all the co-ops can still support that. Also, I think it was in the CRE report, but I'm not sure. And Kristen's brought it up. I just wanted to let you know that they did suspend Acre, that PAC money for Acre, Nr Eca, and I don't know when they're gonna start that, but I'm guessing they're waiting for everything to settle down. So that has been suspended. And it looks like the CRA still wants to hold a meeting in Grand Lake this year, and they're looking to push it towards August. So I'm hoping that'll happen. And they have it slated for everybody to stay up at the lodge. So other than that, that's all I got. Does anybody else have anything else?
Just a note that I'll be taking one of my CCD courses, and it does overlap with our board meeting next month. So I may be joining a little late. I'll provide feedback on any items in the board packet in advance.
Okay. Is it start in the morning, Kristen?
Yeah, they go from 8 to 11:30 each day.
Okay. Anybody got anything else? Okay. Old business. Do we have any old business? Any new business?
Jeff, anything on the fire? I've been working on that all week, and Justin's been they're up Drowsy Water today. But did we come up with anything, values at risk from flooding, erosion? anything, potential damage to life or property with Middle Park's assets? Is there anything that, and it's through the Emergency Watershed Protection Program. It's kind of specific, different from FEMA, but just kind of erosion and flooding type damages to our assets, be it poles, lines, substations. Have we, in operations, is there anything that we would need to include on that report?
We're still working on that. We have, as I mentioned earlier, we've reached out to the committee that is kind of trying to organize that stuff. And, we have told them that we do want to participate as part of the project. And, as they continue to have meetings, we'll have somebody that will be a designated representative to that group. But we have not come up with a total number at this point. We've been looking at some of the areas and I think we have less at risk than what we anticipated we might.
Okay, because this week they're wrapping up that A section east, and I've been out on those. I'm on that committee, and kind of looked at power resources, but nothing was identified as a high value at risk where they went through this damage report, damage survey report, and it came up a couple times, and they said it's a gray area because it's for private property, and with our lines crossing private property, it would be a possibility. But they're trying to, right now, they're just quantifying a number to request funds from Washington, D.C. through Natural Resources Conservation Service, Emergency Watershed Protection Program. So if we knew of anything, I could bring that up. They're trying to wrap it up next week.
I have worked or requested the group that's working on that locally to get with the mapping so we can share data both directions. So far, I haven't seen any request for data or any request for a data sharing agreement. But when we get those requests, we'll provide them the information.
Okay, I'll let you know because I do sit on that committee, and they're trying to make that move as fast as possible to get money from Washington coming toward the fire for erosion and sedimentation for values of risk of property and life, and our assets lines up that's probably both. So if you know of any, let me know, Scott, and I can take them forward to the committee.
Yeah, no, I mean,
we really need to get the data going for find out where these areas are that they're susceptible to this so that we can look and see what we have in those areas. And like I said, we've kind of requested there are people that work with our GIS person, but I haven't seen any data flowing either direction yet.
I'll see if I can get that through the committee and get them to Joe or to Heather.
Yes,
that's correct.
Okay. That's all I've got on the fire.
Justin, did you have something?
No, emphasizing Mark is one of those 6 people on that committee that spent the last 3 days walking around all these drainages. So that we just had a parade of cars in and out of here all day. So, there's no assets for mountain parks in our drainage that we identified, but I know a few of those. I would emphasize getting that as soon as possible.
Mark, just a quick question. Did you guys look, and I'm not positive on how our system works and what the lines coming out of the Adams Tunnel going to that substation that serves Grand Lake. Did you guys look at that stuff when you were on the ground up there?
No, specifically not that. We were looking at houses, looking at a lot of Northern's playing a big role. They're the sponsor of that east end, but they really have not looked at the utilities. It's been houses, mainly stuff that's prone to flooding or massive debris flows. It'll be that affect property or life. So but I couldn't think of anything that we had, but I'm kind of ignorant enough. That's not my country. What are our electrical assets, especially like 125 or any of that would be damaged by either flooding or debris flow.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just kind of concerned, like if there's a debris flow either side of that substation in Grand Lake, what does it take out? What do we do? How's that whole area fed? Can we, I mean, you guys think about those things, but as a board member, it's definitely, there's an awful lot of acreage above Grand Lake that doesn't have anything on it right now. It's not going to have anything on it for a long time. And
there's going to be a lot of debris flow as we look at like the North Inlet, places like that are going to have tremendous debris flows. And do we have anything in those areas? And I wasn't on every single site. Say we just had poles in a huge debris flow, or have they got the integrity to stand that? More so than a house, but you bury a pole 10 feet deep in debris, and it's not as bad as burying a house or something else. But I've just got to ask a question. I don't know. I'm asking.
Mark, is you said they're planning on wrapping up here soon, and or what is there something?
Yeah, the initial deal they're trying to wrap up this week for the field assessments, and it's just a financial tool. What are the assets? How much money are they going to ask for? What is it going to take? Let's say we're looking at a lot of flood barrier bags, that type of stuff right now, or diversions to get that water and debris around assets. Let's say we had a substation right in a debris fan. How are we going to protect that substation, or critical poles? I don't know what else it might be, Scott.
Are they trying to wrap it up? When you say this week, as in like tomorrow, would we have to have that information to them?
The sooner the better. If you're just trying to get an idea right now, they want to point on a map and say, okay, what is the risk, and about how much is it going to cost initially? Just an estimate, how much money we ask for to treat that problem on private property. Which that makes it a little bit tough. Say we've got poles across federal ground. That I ask the question, they go, well, depends. So we have a lot of those depends type deal. But we've got the opportunity right now. If you know of any of those, Scott, if you could let me know just the potential, and it's just the preliminary stages of it. They're just asking for funding. Do we ask for 10 million or do we ask for $30 million from USDA in Washington?
Yeah, and we have to know where those areas are to know if we have anything in there.
I mean,
I'll see if I can get the map to you. No, I will get the map to you of the severe burned areas and the critical areas. They've identified those in a team. They hired out Colorado Department of Ag, but houses that were at risk and other structures that were at risk. But I didn't see anything on our electrical system so far. But I didn't know if they didn't know, or we didn't identify them, or they didn't identify them. But we've got the opportunity now to do that. I'll see if I can get the that fire and the burn severity and debris flow areas. They've got inundation maps for 5, 10, 20, 50, and 100-year storm events. So that's kind of what we're going by right now. Kind of a difficult situation, but that's what
I see Scott's point though, is that we not necessarily not experts on what's going to slide or what assets could be in jeopardy. That wouldn't be our our thing. So
I'll get you the map and get Heather or whoever in you can look at. I didn't know, because you met with the northern guys, right?
Yeah, if you definitely I can think of some areas like look at Sun Valley Ranch. I mean, that whole hillside could come down on that what's left of that subdivision, and there's a lot of line. I would guess we'd have some of those areas.
Yeah, one thing is that Dale Kishbaugh from Crea is helping us with FEMA, and he has suggested that based on what we are doing with FEMA, that it is difficult for us to also participate in this one, because then the two will potentially both of them will exclude us, and we're getting more information from him. But we're still working through that process, because we have asked FEMA for money for some of this stuff, and they are asking if we are participating in any other federal programs to receive money. And so I think that is a potential issue for us that we need to clarify, and he's working on doing that right now.
Yeah, working through the Emergency Watershed Protection Program. EWP is the acronym for it. And it's to protect, not to replace them. And Jessica, yes, Trail Creek's included. So
Okay.
anything, but I'll get Scott a map, and I'll try to keep that on the front burner with this committee.
Okay, thanks, Mark. Anybody got anything else, new business? Do we have a need for a Mountain Park Services meeting? No. Okay. Looks like we do have a need for an executive session. I think we added C to that as well, didn't we? An election issue.
We did director elections, and I would add D, FERC settlement. We can discuss some of the information related to the FERC settlement and what the next steps are.
Okay.
So
Do we need somebody?
do we want to maybe break for lunch? Take 30 minutes and come back at like 12:15?
Yeah, we could do that. We're gonna have to break our live feed anyway, right? So I guess
Yes.
now would be a good time to do it. Is a half hour good for everybody? Get it back in time? Everybody good with that? Okay,
12:15?
12:15.
Just want to confirm, you're just going into executive session following lunch?
Yes.
Okay, so can someone track the motion to go into executive session? That has to be on live feed, correct?
Yes.
It does.
So I guess we can just
Go in now.
How about if I move? Yeah, how about if I move that the board take a recess, and at 12:15 we go into executive session for the purposes of discussing personnel matters, employee retention and recruitment, legal advice regarding the FERC settlement, and what was the other thing?
director elections.
The director elections.
Thanks, Liz. I think that should cover it. And we got a second by Dick. Any further discussion on that? Okay, all those in favor? Okay. Joe, I guess you can cut our live feed then, and we'll see you guys